What's going on, guys? Welcome to yet another live Hackintosh build. This is being brought to you live right here on my channel on YouTube. I am streaming this live, as the name suggests. So thank you guys for coming out live, and also to those watching the recorded version. If you've seen my live builds in the past, then you probably know how this is going to be. My live builds are very laid back, very relaxed. Grab some popcorn. As always, never let you guys down. I do have my Hackintosh juice here. And this is a place where you can just hang out for, probably around 2 hours in the recorded version, probably closer to 3 for the live version. You can come by, watch me build a computer, go in the chat room and ask questions, get your questions answered, also answer other people's questions, and it creates a really nerdy environment, which is something that, strangely, we all really like. So joining me is Dontae Harris, Mr. Casey Nightmare. You may or may not know him from Tech Habit Weekly. It's a podcast that we do together, and if you're not watching that, you really, really, really should. So go ahead and get on that. But Dontae, go ahead and give us a little bit of an introduction, any kind of a Hackintosh background that you may have.
Yes, I've been doing Hackintoshes for a few years now. I don't currently own a Hackintosh as of right now. I do have a Mac Pro that I am actually using to view everything here. A little bit about me: I've been in IT for a very long time. Do basic, but virus repairs and personal builds, laptops, cell phones, things like that. Basically anything tech related, which hence the show of our podcast, Tech Habit Weekly. You can find me at twitter.com at Casey Nightmare, and you can always like and subscribe to this channel, and find me on Bob's channel on Tech Habit Weekly, and for this live build. You already know where to catch him at RocheTechnologies.com, and I'm excited to be here for the live build and going to answer any questions that you may not be able to see in the chat. So if you guys have something to say, feel free to put it on the chat, and I'll try the best that I can to ask Bob, because some of the stuff he can't see, so I'll have to ask the question for him, and and we'll just go from there. But it's gonna be cool, laid back show. You guys let us know some of the specs and some of the things that you guys have. What kind of computers you guys have, what kind of monitors you guys like, solid state drives, things like that. It's all good, shared information, and we're just gonna have fun today, and we're gonna get this thing built, and it's gonna be a very good build and a very good live Hackintosh build. So we're gonna get right into it.
Absolutely. And by the way, before we get started, I just want to say that this takes a lot of effort, and if you really do appreciate this at all, please feel free to give this video a thumbs up. It'll really encourage us to make this community grow, and make this itself, kind of a habit. And what I do plan to do is, every Intel or every iteration of new Intel processors, I plan to do a live build. So I did one for Sandy Bridge, Ivy Bridge, and now we're here with the Haswell. And I guess with that, we'll segue right into the components you see right here. This is a Haswell-based system, in case you couldn't tell from the title. You just saw the thumbnail and clicked it. We are using an Intel 4770K. That's this guy right here. For the YouTube audience, I will zoom into this box so you can see it a little bit closer. Probably about as good as it's going to be. At least we could probably get this out of the way. But this is a fully unlocked CPU. This is the top-of-the-line socket 1150 processor. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that, because they actually make socket 1150 Xeon processors. And that's something new that I've never seen before. Really, the only Xeons I've seen are for really high-end systems, such as socket 1366, socket 2011, things like that. And so, Dontae, have you ever used an unlocked processor, like an i7 or anything?
Oh yeah, I've got pretty good experience with that. I had a Hackintosh build that I made out of a custom Alienware case. It was just for the case, but I did all the internals myself, and I was using a Intel Core i5 2500K unlocked processor, and it was awesome. I'm surprised that thing actually performed the way it did. Terrell's got pretty good experience with Core i7s that were unlocked, and 2600Ks and things like that. And those were Sandy Bridge builds, and it was very nice. So these certain processors have that hyper-threading technology, of course, that we all know and love, to be able to have like
Awesome.
8 cores and 16 threads and things like that, and 4 cores and 8 threads, and so they're really good and really ideal for overclocking, to get that higher speed and be able to just see what the Geekbench is and push that processor to its limits. So I really like Intel processors, and pretty much stick to them. And I used to be an AMD guy. I mean, all the way through. Everything I built was AMD until I actually started to understand that hyper-threading technology and what we needed to build a Hackintosh. So that Intel chip is going to be awesome, and I can't wait to see some of the performance specs that thing is going to do. So it's going to be very, very nice. And I recommend anyone who's going to do a Hackintosh, of course, to have an Intel processor, and also just be a little patient. You don't have to have the top of the line processor. You can, stretch it out and say, okay, I'm going to go to Core i3, as Bob does have a Core i3 build as of right now.
Yep.
So it's fine, but these
Things a
processors
tank,
are
actually.
nice. Yes, they're built very, very well, and they last a really long time,
Yep.
and they
And
hold its
I get the
value.
question. I get the question all the time. Can I build an AMD Hackintosh? You can. Yes.
Yes,
Is it
yes, I have.
recommended? Should you? No.
No, I have.
It's not stable.
Didn't
Patched
work too
kernels.
well. Patch kernels. You know, a lot of KEX files I was trying to get. It. I was having problems with USB devices and sound options. I mean, it was really hard, and it was
Yeah.
actually so unstable. I just turned it back into the original Windows computer that it was until I actually bought my parts for an Intel build, and it ran smooth. And I was a person who
Yep.
just basically read up on it, So coming from a guy who just took some money and said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and build this thing. First time around, it ran, and it ran perfectly.
Perfect.
So it was perfect. I'm dead serious. I'm
Yeah,
talking
and
sound.
I
I
know
was
we're
able to
gonna.
update. Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah, I mean it's like a real Mac, honestly, nowadays. And don't get me wrong, I know every single time I mention this topic of AMD Hackintoshes, there's like one or two people down in the chat or in the comments on YouTube, and they'll be like, "No, I have an AMD machine now, and it's awesome. It's great. It updates." That's good. I mean, go ahead and go about that. If that works for you, that's great. But for the majority of people, it just doesn't, and that's kind of what we're talking about here. You might be able to get one very specific AMD chip with a very specific kernel, and as long as you don't update ever, you're probably going to be okay. But we don't like that.
So in other words, just buy Intel processors,
Exactly.
just to be safe. Just
Just
buy Intel.
remember, you get what you pay for.
Yes. So
Moving on, I guess we'll go with just what's right on top here. We're going to go really far away. We got processors. Now we're going to talk about a PCI wireless card. This is probably the most common wireless card for the Hackintosh, and that's because it works extremely well. This is a TP-Link TLWDN 4800. Very very nice card. Supports full wireless N. There is no wireless AC or anything yet, but trust me, this card is absolutely great. I have a 30 meg down, 5 meg up connection at my house, and this has no problem pulling in all that bandwidth. So this is a great card. Runs about $40 from Newegg or Amazon, and it's not required. Intel, a lot of the Intel Ethernet chipsets actually do work just fine. This is more of a luxury than a necessity, but if you don't feel like running an Ethernet cable all the way upstairs from downstairs, then feel free to go wireless, as we have here. Moving on now, we'll go with our graphics cards. And this is actually a first for me personally. I've never built a Hackintosh system that has a dual GPU configuration. And back in the day, it really wasn't so much recommended, but now that Apple's using these NVIDIA's 600 and 700 series cards, you can even run up to, I think, 3, maybe even 4. I'm not sure about that. But you can have 3 or 4 of these, and it works right out of the box with the Chimera or Chameleon bootloader. So very awesome. The card that we have right here, we have a GeForce GTX 760. This card has 2 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory, bunch of CUDA cores. I'm not sure of the exact number. I think right around, it's either 700 or like 1300. Exact specs can be found. There's a link in the description where you can go and see this on Amazon. But we will be having 2 of these. And not every application in OS X can take advantage of 2 cards. Something I did find out though, this machine here in particular is going to be a dual boot. As you can see, I'll get into it in a second. We have 2 solid state drives, so it's going to be a dual boot between Windows and then one for OS X. You can SLI these cards and leave the bridge in. OS X won't panic, it won't do anything bad. It just won't see the other card like Windows will. So one reason that you might want to have 2 cards, maybe it's a gaming build with some OS X stuff on the side. That's an absolutely perfect use for a dual GPU system. Dontae, have you ever used a dual GPU configuration before?
I actually have. It was a build for a customer, and it actually worked really well. I was actually surprised about some of the performance that it got by having dual GPUs on it. And honestly, if you're a person that's going to be doing heavy gaming, like maybe playing Crysis on full settings, or maybe even StarCraft and some of those games that just take a lot higher bandwidth when it comes to the actual video output and throughput, you want to get dual GPU. But if that's not an option for you, you can also get a single card. But also, like Bob says, and this is a term that's always thrown around here, is you get what you pay for. So don't so much look at the brand names. The brand names, some of the different names that are on there are differences in clock speeds and different specs on it. So you got to check that too. So the core clock and shaders and things like that. Those are some of the things you want to check out when purchasing a video card. So basically, just get something that you think will be pretty much mid to high range, and that's from just me personally, only because you have to kind of future-proof yourself. I would never buy a card that I think would barely, get me by. So,
Absolutely.
But yeah, that's just one of those options. But definitely dual GPUs is for a preferred customer, something that that you need that power. I wouldn't do it right off the bat though.
Yeah, and I mean with GPUs, I know a lot of people ask, does the manufacturer really matter? For example, we have EVGA cards here, but ASUS cards work, Gigabyte cards work. Most of these cards, a 670 is a 670, and they have the same actual GPU chip in there. A lot of times, what the manufacturers change is the look, which really is the cooling system. So as long as it has the actual specs of the reference card, then you should be fine. You should be good to go there. So like I said, we are using EVGA versions of the 760. Moving on, right here we have the two solid-state drives I just mentioned. These are each 240 gigabytes. Fortunately, the prices of the solid-state drives have gone quite a bit. A lot of drives now are below the whole $1 per gigabyte spec, I guess you could say. We got these for a really, really good deal off Newegg. I think we paid about 150 for each one of these, so that's a very good deal. That used to be how much like an 80 gig would cost, and so now we're at 240. So Dontae, I'm sure you can agree, once you go SSD, you just don't go back ever.
Not at all. Matter of fact, that's the problem I'm having now. When I sold my 2012 Mac Mini, it had a 120 gigabyte solid state drive that I put with a data doubler with the original terabyte hard drive that it came with. Well, I sold it on eBay when I purchased my Mac Pro. Well, now my Mac Pro came with two 1 terabyte hard drives. Well, as of right now, I haven't purchased an SSD, and believe me, it's slow. When you go to boot, it's terrible. And in even file transfers and things like that, the biggest thing with that is being able to get your apps to run really snappy, and then also having non-moving parts. It reduces heat, especially in a MacBook or a laptop. And in my 2009 MacBook, I have a 240 gig solid state drive by OCZ, and even though it's only using a SATA 2 controller, it is super fast when it boots up. I mean, I think the Apple, the little ring spins, I think maybe 3 times, and then it starts. And it's good to go. And as soon as it starts, I can get on Safari, open things up, and it's just boom, boom, boom. So it's really, really nice. And I recommend anyone, if you're going to do a new build, to definitely invest into a solid state drive, because the performance on boot times and file transfers and application loading and things are just astronomical compared to those of like, say, a 5400 RPM hard drive. So I highly recommend them. And same thing with that. You get what you pay for. So there's a lot of different options. There isn't any sort of like a good name brand SSD to put into a Hackintosh. Pretty much any Hackintosh with the right controller on it, and for your board, which is going to be a SATA port more than likely, 2.5 inches. So you may have to use a bracket or something like that to put it in the 3.5 inch drive bays.
3.5.
So those are fine. You can pretty much put any one of those, and it's just your preference on cost and brand and things like that. So, but I do recommend Kingston. I would have recommended OCZ before the company pretty much went out of business, but I pretty much bought, I don't know, probably 4 or 5 OCZ branded solid state drives. But some of the ones I would stick away from, only because of some of the IOPS and read write speeds, or some of the Samsungs. You can buy them for the price, and a lot of times they run pretty decent deals on them on Amazon.com and whatnot. But honestly, for the read and write speed of what it is on a SATA 3, it says it's SATA 3. It's get about SATA 2 speeds. And I don't know why, but a lot of people, if you're not that tech savvy,
I think they do have different models. Some of the Samsung ones are a bit faster, but a lot of them are also really slow.
Yeah, and that's just my personal opinion, since it's so confusing. And if you don't know about the read-write speeds, and off the bat, I would probably just stay away from Samsung, in my personal opinion. But anything else, I mean, you should be okay. Usually, you want to run with something that is SATA 3, not SATA 2, depending on your hardware. So because you can Hackintosh an older computer, it doesn't have to be a brand spanking new one. And but just like I said, be sure of what your controllers are running at, and you should be fine. Because like I said, it's a SATA. I have a 240 gig SATA 3, solid state drive that's in a state 2 controller. So it's not running as fast as it could, but it's still lightning
Yeah.
quick over a 2.5 inch, like 5400 RPM drive. So it's good to go.
Yeah. Once again, once you go SSD, you just don't go back at all. It's impossible without getting very high blood pressure. It's just one of those things. So, moving on, we have a RAID Max, was it Thunder, right? Yes, Thunder version 2 power supply. This is an 830 watt, 35 watt power supply. Not all that common wattage, but we did want to
No,
go
not
with
at all.
something pretty high because we are using a dual GPU configuration. The most power consuming part in a computer is by far the graphics card, at least if your system has a dedicated GPU and it's a mid to high range one. I guarantee that it's going to require at least on the spec sheet probably 450 watts. I know these 760s they call for about 500 each. Well, 500 for one card. It doesn't necessarily double though if you have two cards. So I mean, we could even probably run this particular build off of, I'd say, probably a 750 watt, but it's always good to give yourself some extra wattage for future upgrades, things like that. So we figured 835 was the sweet spot, and we actually got this at a very good deal. I think it was only about $70 or something. So for 835 watt supply, that's really not that bad at all. We got a nice promotion on Newegg. So
Bob,
there's that.
we're actually having problems with this stream on Roche Technology.
Really?
Yeah.
What kind of problems?
Well, people were saying there's no stream, so we're trying to figure out what's.
That's interesting. I know I embedded it. Give me a second.
Okay.
I know it was working yesterday. It had like the timer and everything on it. This is one of those things we were just talking about when it comes to technology. It should work.
It should work. But I mean, that's why we love it. And honestly, that's how I got into technology. You know, as a kid, my mother was given a computer from her cousin, and I bricked it like completely. And she's like, "I'm not paying to get that fixed." And I just kept tinkering with it, and I would get something to work, and then something else, and then that's just now I pretty much got OCD to this day. Like when something doesn't work, I have a problem. I have to get it fixed. So
yeah. Yeah, for some reason, the embed code is the video that I uploaded yesterday to promote the stream, but I know I changed it. Maybe the settings just didn't take, like the saves, they didn't save or something. Let me go ahead and fix that really quick. Sorry for the delay for the live viewers, but this is what happens when you watch live. You get the live fails that you just don't get any other way.
Yeah. Hey, Bob, what's the total cost for this build?
Total cost ends up being, I believe, about 2,100-ish.
Okay.
If I recall correctly, which I think I do. Okay, so really quick here, copy the embed code. Yeah, I really don't understand why this didn't save.
Unless maybe everyone just needs to go to YouTube.
All right, go ahead and try to refresh the page.
You hear that, Terrell? Okay.
If it still is not working, then I probably just have to reset the cache or clean it out. Could the Asus Maximus Gene 6 board work as well? I've never heard of the Gene 6. I know those higher end Asus boards though, they do work. And if I'm not mistaken, that's a Haswell board, right? I think it is.
Yeah. All right, we're back up on Roche Technology.
All right, cool. Sorry about that, guys.
This build is actually for a customer, people in the YouTube chat.
Yeah, this is a client build. For more information, link in the description, RocheTechnology.com/customize. This build came by way of that form.
Did Bob 54 Terrell is in a different location than myself and Bob?
Yeah, fun fact, I'm actually like, what, 1,200 miles away from you guys?
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah,
About
Bob's about
14-hour
14 hours.
drive. So yeah, that's interesting. So we got finished with the power supply, right?
Yeah, I believe so.
Okay.
835 watts, right? And
Yep.
oh, and one tip about power supplies, and just kind of a rule of thumb for me, you can never have too much power, ever,
Yeah.
because for future proofing, some of these processors are getting a little heavier on the wattage uses, but like Bob said, the most power consumption you're more likely going to have in your build is going to be from your video card. I mean, there's some that require a minimum of 600 watts, and
Yeah.
it's not like how it used to be. I remember just, oh wow, so many just not that long ago, so many years ago, that people were like, yeah, you don't need anything over a 350 watt power supply. And there's no way I could run on a 350 watt power supply. I mean,
I would
not even
die.
close. I mean, my processor requires like 400 by itself. And you haven't hooked
Yeah.
up, you haven't ran RAM, you haven't put your processor in, or any other thing that's going to be drawing power, optical drives, hard drives, anything. So it's, yeah, like I said, the bigger the better. You can never
Yep.
have too
And I
much.
mean, just because, like, say for example, like with Dontae, what you're saying about future-proofing your computer, you could go out and if you maybe just get like an awesome deal on this absurd power supply. I know they make like 1,500 watters now. If you
Yeah.
go ahead and buy something like that, that doesn't mean you're always going to be pulling 1,500 watts from the wall. You could have like a 1,000,000 watt power supply, but if your system only uses 600 watts, that's all it's going to use. So
Exactly.
don't think that just having a big power supply is going to like really increase your power bill, because it only will if your computer's actually using that much. So
Correct.
feel free to give yourself some room with your upgrade. By upgrade, I mean like either your power supply upgrade or your entire computer upgrade. The rule of thumb, I like to try to get at least an extra 100 watts in there. But like I said, there's a lot of websites now that you just get awesome deals this day only or this week. So always be on the lookout for those kinds of deals, and you can get yourself a really really good price on a really high wattage power supply or any component for that matter. So I guess what we'll do now is we'll go ahead and we'll talk about this motherboard here. Now this
Yes.
motherboard, you haven't seen anything about this on my channel yet, but I did record some videos about this. Basically what this board is, and this board being the Asus Z87WS, this is basically a workstation grade board put down into the 1150 form factor. There's a lot of really nice features on here. For example, this particular motherboard can actually handle a quad SLI configuration, which is not very common on the Haswell platform. That's for like socket 2011 type builds, and so that's actually what WS stands for. If you couldn't have guessed, is workstation. So this thing takes really, really fast RAM, I believe all the way up to 3,000 megahertz. So 3 gigahertz RAM, up to 32 gigabytes of that. This thing also has a mini display port output on the back, which is also not very common. This motherboard, basically to sum it up, has a lot of really interesting things that not many motherboards do. Even an ALC 1150 audio chipset, which I've personally never used before, but does. So I'll get a little bit more into this in just a little bit here. But this is definitely a very interesting, I would even say head-turning motherboard from Asus. And Dante, I'm going to ask you a question here. Do you prefer Gigabyte or Asus boards?
Uh, Honestly, gigabyte boards, only because usually out of the box, a lot of things are already, recognized natively, and it's
Yeah.
just, to me, it's a safe board when you're going to go into a Hackintosh, and I just recommend them pretty much for that reason. If you're an advanced user, you can, yeah, obviously you can use Asus boards and different boards. There's even some ASRock boards that people have been using, and but like I said, the gigabyte ones, to me, they just a little more stable, I think, out of the box. And a lot of things
Oh
just
yeah.
work natively. And that's just my opinion. And then honestly, on the cost, when you start stacking up the motherboards, Gigabyte, can be on a pretty decent level as far as cost. They don't cost as much as Asus boards, but it's also, you have to go into different models and what kind of specifications that you want on the board, different sound inputs and video inputs and things like that. And of course, if it's already on the board, like say onboard video, HDMI, and things like that, if it doesn't have that, more likely it's going to be a little cheaper. And also, you do have the option to use the onboard graphics on a Hackintosh, such as like the graphics 4000 or 4600 or something like that. And I've tested that out on a Sandy Bridge build, and it actually worked right out the the box once I got the Hackintosh install going, and it was great. And but yeah, personal opinion, gigabyte boards, and that's just for me.
Yeah, my next build, Asus does make good quality boards. I think actually the quality of Asus boards is actually a little bit above what Gigabyte produces, but in terms of functionality, either one's going to give you a really nice system. My personal build, you can't see it, but it's down there. That uses a Gigabyte board. My little, I guess, secondary computer that sits on my desk on my test bench is a Gigabyte board, and I've just had nothing but really nice experiences with Gigabyte boards. I have used a couple Asus boards, and those ones that I have used, I did have to put a little bit more research into, but once I did, and I got the board, it was a great result. So great Hackintoshes can absolutely be achieved on an Asus board. But in general, you'll probably end up paying a little bit more for an Asus board over what you pay for a very similar Gigabyte board. But once again, you're probably going to hear it a lot in the stream. You get what you pay for. Moving on here, we have 16 gigabytes of Corsair Vengeance memory. In case you couldn't tell, I think in every single live build video I've done, I used Corsair Vengeance. I love this RAM. I use so many sticks of Corsair Vengeance throughout all my live builds, my personal builds, my family builds, and I've yet to have a bad stick of it ever. And overall, it just looks really nice, whether you get this design, which is like the original, big heat sinks, or they even have the low profile one that's really nice. You have like a big CPU cooler. You won't bump your RAM or anything like that. So Corsair Vengeance, absolutely awesome RAM. And I will say that the prices of RAM have been going up lately. I'm not a fan of it, but they're starting to like skyrocket. We're like on like the big hill of the roller coaster here. It's really not good. I don't know why, but that's just how it is. Also with this build, to cool that 4770K processor, we have for the first time ever, at least for me, an Intel liquid cooler. Actually, a lot of people don't know that Intel even makes CPU coolers. They just kind of know Intel for, well, their processors and somewhat their motherboards. But this is an Intel cooler. This is the TS13X. So this is probably going to be pretty comparable to something like a Corsair H80i. And actually, I have a video coming up on that. I'm going to try to compare the two side by side as fairly as possible. And so, yeah, here we go. And something about this build, it is kind of themed blue. The builder wanted some LEDs in there, so the power supply has a blue LED on it. This, I believe, the little brick, it glows blue. The fan, I think, has an LED on it. So this is going to be a pretty LED-ific, I guess you could say, build, which, once again, is something that on the Hackintosh world is nice because you can customize that kind of stuff. If you want LEDs, or whether you do or don't, you can have it your way. So it's really nice there. Finishing off the components here, we have two 2TB Western Digital green drives. These are really nice. These drives do pack the 4K sectors, so if you want to use this as a boot drive, be sure to check out the video on my YouTube channel all about fixing the 4K sectors. And if you're just using it to store stuff on, you're not really going to boot your macOS install from it, you'll be absolutely fine and you'll have 2 TB of storage. In this case, we actually have 4. As I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a dual boot system, so we're going to have 2 TB for Windows, 2 TB for OS X, along with the 2 solid-state drives. So once again, pretty nice build, very organized, I'll say. And the last component, well, I guess second to last technically, because we haven't gone over the case yet, but this is an LG Blu-ray burner. I'm really not sure of the exact model number, as I don't think it says on here, but there will be a link down there right in the description where you can just go ahead and check it out. I believe it's like $60, and it does work with OS X. OS X Blu-ray support isn't the best. There's only a couple of apps that can actually read and write to Blu-rays. But if it's something that you want, even once again for this build on the Windows side, then they're absolutely compatible and you can use them. So there's that. And then really quick, just to finish off the components, I'm going to bring up the case that we'll be using. This is an interesting case from a brand that I've never used before. It's an Apiva Dream X, or it might be X Dream. But either way, once again, continuing on with that blue theme, we do have a blue side panel here. And this on the front here, this actually will display the current ambient temperature within this case. Once again, a nice customization that you can have on the Hackintosh. And we'll get a little bit more in depth with this case in just a minute here, but here's just a general overview. And I'm going to go ahead and leave it up to you guys. what do you want to install first? We could do the processor and the motherboard outside of the case. We could put the motherboard in the case first, power supply first. What do you usually do, Dontae, when you're assembling a computer?
Normally I go with the motherboard first. That way I can just kind of see how things line up first and give myself, the good working space with my hands and just kind of see how everything lines out, just to give me a good footprint of how big the motherboard is.
Yeah, I agree. I always do motherboard first as well. Some people would argue that some ways are better, and I've actually run into that once where, and I do literally mean once, the only time I've ever put a power supply in first was all purely for cable management. And I will say that this is a case that's not overly awesome. I would say on the 1 to 10 scale of awesomeness. In terms of price, this was probably like a 5 on that scale. And so that being said, this doesn't have the best cable management system out there. So there's not going to be tons of room to run cables behind the motherboard tray and things like that. So this might be a case where we might actually want to run the power supply first. So Terrell, if we can get a shot of inside the case here, we can see where we want to go from here.
Okay.
Actually, I'm going to do
And
some
then also
on camera.
there's another tip as well. You guys don't be afraid to, even when the motherboard is outside of the case, to go ahead and put the RAM on processor. I mean, I've done that too, where I pretty much just put the RAM and processor on the board before installing it inside the case. So just in case if you guys have like maybe a micro ATX case or something that's going to be really tight, that's a good option too.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what's fun about building a PC. I mean, really, and you'll probably end up learning something out of it as well.
Yeah.
But so right here inside the case, we have some accessories. These are like little things to hold the hard drives in place. So these will, these actually kind of act as, I'll say, sliders. They kind of just slide right into these sockets here. We do have some more goodies here. So here we have all of our various, front I/O panel. We have some SATA connections. We have a USB 3 header. All of the various goodies. Your sound for the headphone jack, microphone jack, all that good stuff. But a tour around, the actual case itself. I'll try to show this as good as I can. We do have dual, what look to be 120 millimeter fans up at the top here. We have another 120 in the back here, which this may or may not be coming off with the cooler. We'll have to see once we actually unbox the cooler. Right back over here, as I just mentioned, here's those hard drive cages. I believe there are 4. There's room for 4 drives in this case. So this is another thing that we kind of talked about a little bit ago. Giving yourself room to expand in the future. We're already maxed out on the hard drives. So if he wants to upgrade more in the future, he's going to have to get creative with it and kind of just have them thrown in here somewhere. Or he's going to have to even maybe buy a new case. So how many hard drives do you have, Dontae?
Right now, internally, I have 4 hard drives right now, but that's definitely going to change because of all the 1 terabyte hard drives I have and the Windows drive that I have. And then I kind of just have like an extra storage drive that I keep in there. And I also have an external 1 terabyte drive, which I'm trying to get ready to like consolidate all these 1 terabytes to get like bigger ones. That way I can have my time machine actually back up everything. My time machine's huge. It can't even fit on a 1 terabyte or anything like that. But that's here in the very, very near future. So it's going to be nice though once I actually do get that solid state drive, because and aside the Mac Pro that I have, I don't have to actually take up a hard drive slot. I can actually throw it in like underneath my optical drive. There's an extra SATA port there, and I can just stick it in there and and just let it sit there, and it won't have a problem. I don't have to worry about having a bracket or anything like that. And then also, if you were going to use my particular models, Mac Pro 2009, 2010 model, they do make these different 2.5-inch actual drive trays for it. Like OWC is another company that makes those, and you can have them slot load just like they do all the original drives that are 3.5 inches. So there's also an option there too. So, but normally this is actually the most hard drives I actually kept internally. Normally I would like boot off a solid state, have another internal, and have like a big external. So yeah, normally I usually have a lot more space on the inside, but I'm pretty much using every slot inside this one as of right now.
My current case has space for 6 hard drives. already right now I'm using 5, and I really do want another. So even pretty soon I'm going to be maxed out. So maybe it's time for me to start looking for another case as well. Me personally, I'm not the biggest fan of external hard drives. I feel that they're slower, and granted, I don't have like a Thunderbolt interface or anything, but just because my machine is older and it only has USB 2.0, they're slower. They take up space on your desk. Most oftentimes than not, they require their own power supply, which is another power outlet that I just don't have room for. So I did have a time machine drive like you. I have a 2 terabyte time machine drive. It used to be external, but the backups. I mean, at any given time, I have about 1.4 terabytes of data. That means backed up right from a fresh install.
Yeah.
So that would take like 24 hours just to copy all that over USB 2.0. And so eventually I decided that I was just going to take it out of the case and throw it in my computer. And so now it just runs as an internal hard drive, and it definitely backs up much faster now, I must say.
Right.
So breaking into the board here, the first thing that we're greeted with is 10 SATA cables, which is very generous on gigabytes, or sorry, see, I'm still used to saying gigabyte, very generous on ASUS's part. Try saying ASUS's part, it's fast. But so there's that. Here we have a 3-way SLI bridge along with a 4-way SLI bridge, which we won't be using in this build, but once again, this board does support up to 4-way SLI, and it's all by 8 bandwidth at that point. You can do dual cards at by 16 bandwidth, so that's really nice. We'll actually get the full PCI bandwidth even with our dual GPU configuration on a Haswell platform, which huge thumbs up. Here's a 2-way SLI bridge, which we actually will be using in this build. Once again, you can boot up OS X and have it run perfectly fine with the bridge attached. It just won't necessarily take advantage of it. That's a very common misconception. Now this guy here, you guys will see me kind of weird out about this whenever my unboxing video of this hits the channel, but I don't even know what this is. I don't know how well you guys can see this, but it's like an old school, I don't think it's VGA because it almost looks like a USB header, so it's some kind of data connector, but it's really old. I mean, it's super old. And so if you know what that is, leave a comment down below, or why. Even better, don't let me know what it is. Let me know why ASUS included it on this newer hardware, because I honestly have no idea. I opened the box and I was like, lol, what? We have some little extensions here for the front panel connectors. And as also, we get a, it sits in your PCI brackets, but it's not actually PCI. We have 2 USB 2.0 and even a Firewire 400 port, which once again, unexpected, kind of like this thing, but this is at least appreciated. So now getting to the actual board itself. Hey guys, let me tell you what, this is a really, really nice looking motherboard. As I said earlier, it's very high quality as well. It doesn't just look nice. I've yet to actually fire it up and turn it on, so I'm pretty sure that it's just going to perform just as nice as it looks. At least that's the hope. So metal legs on the desk. I really do try to avoid static electricity, anything like that. I've never had any bad luck with static electricity and components, and I've built tons of computers. Have you ever had any bad luck with static, Dontae?
No, not at all. And a lot of people, they swear by having, anti-static wrist straps and things like that. Now, I'm the type of guy that I'm not going to ever downplay safety because, yes, it
is important.
999th time you've done something successful, that 1000th time you'll destroy it. So I understand the dangers in electrostatic discharge, but I'm not a guy that normally uses it. You basically can protect yourself by, make sure you're touching something metal or the case, or sometimes I keep those bags that the hard drives come in, because you got to realize they can't have electrostatic discharge, when they ship them. So those are good things to touch too. And then also not being on a carpeted surface while building. And, those are just some of the safety precautions that you can have while building a computer. But yeah, I'm not the big, I don't have like the phobia, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to destroy this thing with static electricity or anything like that. But I do own anti-static wrist strap, barely use it, but it's just one of those things. But it's safe, you can never be too safe, I guess. But just you don't have to.
It won't hurt you.
Put the emphasis on it so much. Yeah, it doesn't have to be like, oh my gosh, you didn't use it. What are you doing? But it is what it is. But do you guys use anti-static wrist straps at all? Let us know down in the comments.
Absolutely. Getting a little bit more into the board here. This board is once again socket 1150 Haswell, not backwards compatible with 1155 processors. One thing interesting about this board, once again, is this actually has dual 8-pin CPU connectors, which leads me to believe that you can really, really overclock this thing. Most motherboards, they can just have one of those, and that's more than enough power for even like a 4.2 something gigahertz overclock, probably even more. This board gives you two of those. So I don't know what kind of overclocking they expect people to be doing on here, but that's insane. They do some really nice cooling systems here. So we have the fins with that have the heat pipes that lead down here, into which your case fans might kind of suck air out the back here. We actually even have a supplemental 6-pin power connector for your PCI, because if you're powering something like 4 graphics cards, your PCI lanes are going to want as much power as possible, so you can actually tie right into there and give them, as much power as they need. So that probably not really necessary for only a dual card configuration, but if we might use it. We'll see how it performs. But we have, once again, the 4 PCI Express. They're all PCI 3.0. These 2 up here, or I think actually the 2 yellow are by 16, and the 2 black are by 8. Moving here, here's like the little cooler right on top of the chipset here. Here's our 4 memory slots, maximum of 32 gigabytes of RAM, up to 3,000 megahertz, which is insane.
That's really fast.
Yeah. I mean, most RAM runs at 1600.
1600, yeah.
More than half.
Right.
So that's just insane. And also here we have 10 SATA ports, which is also very nice for, especially if you're a content producer, or like we were just talking about, how I have like 6 hard drives, hopefully pretty soon here. And with Haswell, they give you support out of the box for 6 that use the chipset. But a lot of motherboard manufacturers do is they put a secondary chipset on there to give you even more SATA. So this is the integrated, or the yellow ones here, that actually gives you the SATA 3. And then the black ones give you SATA 3 also, but on a Marvell controller, which for all intents and purposes probably isn't quite as fast as the native controller, but it's still SATA 3. It beats SATA 2, and it sure as heck beats only having 6 SATA ports. So really huge props there to ASUS for adding that second controller. I guess last thing we'll show you before we start to put this thing in the case here is the rear I/O. Lots of USB options, both 2.0 and 3.0. You have dual gigabit Ethernet ports, which is really nice. Even an old school PS2 port. I say old school because I've never used PS2, at least for for the last 5, 6, 7 even years. So some people still do use it. I did mention this a bit earlier. This motherboard does have a mini DisplayPort output, which is very uncommon. And one thing to note is that there's no DVI. There's only mini DisplayPort, regular DisplayPort, and HDMI. So very interesting configuration there. But it'll definitely work. So what I'm going to do right now is get the screws ready to actually secure the motherboard down inside of the case. We have Maga in the chat room here talking about some servers. One server blade had a terabyte of RAM. Each of the 10 CPUs had 128 cores, and it cost 150,000 euros. Or no, that's pounds.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I just got an internship in their server room. They just bought 4 servers, and it has dual Xeons, both 8 cores, so 16 cores, 192 gigabytes of RAM. I'm not sure of the other specs in terms of storage or anything like that, but they're very nice servers. I think each of them costed I think the company about 15,000. So they're really, really nice servers, and they're actually using those servers to virtualize their older servers. So they have a bunch of old servers now just sitting around because now they can just virtualize those within all their RAM.
Isn't that crazy really to be able to have that much RAM to do that?
Exactly. Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's a really interesting place. They have a lot. I mean, it's basically like, for someone like me or you, it's amazing. It's really
I've got
nice
a question here in the chat. Want to know if this bill will affect the power management.
Haswell does have native power management, so once again, as we've said before, Reagan is very streamed. In theory, it shouldn't. But I don't think it will. I've built Haswell systems before, and power management has been fully intact. Really, the only platform nowadays that you have to worry about is Socket 2011. Which even that, now that the Mac Pro uses a socket 2011 processor, I don't see that being a problem for much longer. I asked the guy what's the largest hard drive. He was expecting like petabytes, and he just said 8 terabytes. That's quite the difference.
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's see here. So this is an ATX board, so that means we're probably going to have 9 of these little motherboard mounts.
Yep.
Which these things are, I don't know about you, Dontae, but this is probably the part I like least, is having to put all these little mounts into place.
I can tell you this. Normally, I only use 4 of them because some of them, and I don't know if it's because of the threading either on the riser or on the board itself, but some of them aren't threaded very right or correctly, and you can actually strip them out. And so I try to use as least as
Yeah,
possible.
it's a
I just try to mount
nightmare.
just the corners, and just the 4 corners, and then I'm good.
Yeah, that's honestly, not a bad way to go. It really isn't. These things can be a huge pain. And I've actually run into cases. I mean, inside the case here, I know you guys probably can't see all that well, but there's like little holes where you actually put these little mounts into, and some case manufacturers label them, and you're like, oh, that's nice. I know that this is an ATX hole, that's a micro ATX hole, so I don't need to use
Right,
that one. I've actually
right.
had cases where they were mislabeled, and you don't
Wow.
know, so you have to come back. You have to go back and screw them all back out again, and it ends up just being like this huge ordeal. But I mean, if you were going to build a computer today, do you think it would be micro ATX, ATX, micro ITX? What format, I guess, do you like the
Honestly, I
best?
like the full ATX only because normally with micro ATX boards, and this is normally, you get less options. With a bigger board, normally you can get more I/O on the back, more USB ports, and more sound options and things like that. And like you said, with the mini display port that's on this particular Asus Z78 workstation board, it just depends on your preference. A lot of time people want to take a smaller board because of their case. And most full
Yeah.
ATX cases can do, like you said, micro ATX and full ATX form factor. So honestly, I'm not a big fan of it. I believe, I'm not sure if Terrell, I'm trying to remember if Terrell had a micro ATX gigabyte board at one point, but I opted to get the full size, which was fine. It was just slightly different model than the one he had, and everything still ran fine. And to me, it just depends on those certain aspects of it. If you need a certain type of video output or something that's on the board, you might want to go with some of the full size ones. And if you just need kind of a bare minimalistic, you don't really need that many USB ports, maybe four to six is fine. Then of course, yes, the micro ATX form factors are just as fine. I mean, it's just like I said, mostly preference on case size and some of the rear I/O. So that's just my opinion. But let me know, do
Yeah,
you guys use
absolutely.
full ATX or micro ATX in the chat?
I'm with you there. I'm pretty much at the point where the bigger the board, like you say, the more the options, and I like my
Mhm.
options. That's one of the
Yeah.
biggest advantages, I think, to building a computer is you get to pick what options you have. And granted,
Right.
I mean, there's some crazy size motherboards now. I mean, for example, like Mufasa used, it was called HPTX, and it's so big that there's literally only a handful of cases that even can fit it.
Wow.
But I mean, that thing had plenty of SATA ports, plenty of RAM slots, and now there's a new format. Well, I'll say newer. It's called SSIEEB, and it is for big systems like that, dual socket Xeon builds. But it actually brings it to a much smaller form factor. It's not that much bigger than say like an extended ATX board. So it's kind of like a mid ground, even though it still has 2 processors. I believe 12 RAM slots, maybe actually I think it'd be 16 RAM
Hmm.
slots, 2 processors, tons of PCI, and it's really not
That's
this
awesome.
huge monster motherboard. So that's something that you guys can look into if you're looking for even just a small. You can get a dual processor build. It doesn't have to be 8 core system. It can be a
Yeah.
dual quad core, and even
Yep.
even on the socket 2011. I would
They
say
do have
for
that dual core.
25 to 3 grand, you could probably build an 8 core server grade machine and be very happy with it, and probably even be OS 10 compatible.
Nice.
Okay, so what we're going to do here is is we're going to put the motherboard in the case. Actually, you know what? Before we do that, we need to put in the rear I/O panel. I don't want to forget that. Let's see here, if I can find it. There it is. So here's the rear I/O panel right here. I'll take it out of this packaging really quick. PC man, you don't have to post your question like 16 times. And he left.
Arrivederci.
But here we have the rear I/O panel. Very easy to do. One way to tell if you're installing this right, usually pretty much every motherboard nowadays has a PCI or a PS2 port on the back of the rear I/O, and so that always goes at the top. Unless you're doing like a PowerMac G5 mod, then it's on the bottom. But,
oh yeah.
So that goes at the top. So you literally just kind of line it up. There's a little rectangle cut out in the back of the case here, and you literally just kind of push on it until it snaps into place. Yeah, Eric, it's going to be this kind of night in response to PC man. That's just how we roll. Like a couple of gangsters. People are disliking because we're not starting. I only see one dislike, and we started a while ago.
Right. But it kind of lets you guys know how long it actually takes. And we're explaining all the components as deep as we can as well.
Yeah, that's honestly
because it is a Hackintosh. I mean, we're not just saying throw an i7 in there and go. It's like, wait a minute, which i7 are you using? Which
that's
socket?
Honestly what takes like the longest. Yeah. A lot of people, like, whenever I talk about my live builds, I'm like, yeah, come hang out for 2 or 3 hours. And they're like, what? I can build a computer in 4 seconds. I'm like, okay, but you don't explain it to people. Right. You're not talking to people, explaining what you're doing, showing it, moving the camera. There's a lot that actually goes into this. And I'm lucky to have someone like Dontae, a dedicated producer, which has really, really helped. I don't have to manage the cameras and everything like I used to have to. So that's a huge help.
And I think my pretty face has been helping them views. No, but anyway.
Oh, yeah, of course.
We got a question from Paul Hodge here. Want to know, will you be overclocking this particular build?
Yes, and that's the reason why we want the liquid cooler. We easily could have went with a fan cooler, especially now with these Haswell chips. They're really good on power consumption. So really, what it comes down to is lower voltage equals lower heat. So we can overclock and still have plenty of room with a liquid cooler.
Right.
So yeah, even with a good air cooler, you could still push this processor and be just fine. But we're hoping to probably get to about the 4 gigahertz range. We could go higher than that, but I think 4.2 is the kind of the sweet spot. After that, you really, really have to get very, very specific with every single setting, and I'm busy. If the client wants to do that whenever he ends up getting his machine, he's free to. He's more than welcome to. But just to get it started off, I'd say 4.0 is a pretty sweet spot.
Yeah. You got to test them out. I mean, because sometimes it just won't boot. I mean, you have to, you have to literally your settings sometimes and find that sweet spot. Yeah.
Yeah, it takes time.
Yeah. But once you get it, I've seen people overclock to like ridiculous speeds. So it is very possible if you want to stretch your processor out more, especially with an unlocked processor, being able to do that. And this Intel i7, this 4770K quad-core processor, I mean, that thing should overclock pretty well, uppers to 4 gigahertz and above, because it's running at 3.5 anyway, and that's right out the box. So it's going to be very nice. But yeah, just try it. I mean, if you guys are scared, then I wouldn't do it. But if you think you can manage the voltages and and just tweak it here and there just to see what kind of performance you get, I definitely think it's worth giving it a try.
Absolutely. I mean, especially if you go out of your way or a little bit out of your budget to buy a liquid cooler, you're kind of crazy not to at least try it.
Right. Also, there's a question here asking, will the GPUs be overclocked?
I don't really plan on it. these GPUs are going to be very fast. And actually, I have unboxed these GPUs. I've done some videos on them already. And SLI'd in Cinebench on Windows, I actually got 107 frames per second. So they're plenty fast.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never really been into GPU overclocking. OS 10 really shouldn't have a problem. I mean, you're really just changing frequencies. It's like the processor. But I don't really see the need to because they are already very good performing cards. I have a single 760 in my personal machine, and even with that, I'm able to edit Drive 3 1080p displays without a hitch. I mean, it's still awesome. So, I mean, I think really the only people that are avid about overclocking graphics cards are really, really high-end gamers, I guess we could say. Yeah, I've ran into one of those troublesome mounts. It was going so good up until now. I think I gotcha. Take that. I recently built myself a gaming and Hackintosh PC. Well, how is it? Let us know in the comments.
Do you use Windows on that gaming/Hackintosh PC?
Yeah, that's pretty much like the main use for Windows nowadays, at least to me. Really, the only time I use Windows outside of for my schoolwork is if I want to just like play San Andreas or something.
Yep.
But I mean, even since like GTA 5 came into my life on my PS3, I haven't touched Windows outside of school and work. There's just really not enough hours to even play GTA as much as I would like to. Days need to be longer.
Yeah. It's like the biggest thing. We're just running out of time, like, with everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. But hopefully, I'll be done with school very soon. That I personally can't wait for.
I bet.
Jake, am I late? You are never late to a RocheTechnology party.
Cause a RocheTechnology tech party don't stop. No, I'm joking.
Now you got it. There you go.
Windows 8.1, boo. Boo to you. The Prince Ali. I honestly do have it. I have it on my Mac Pro and the MacBook, so it's just one of those things I hate to not know. I don't want to get a Windows 8 laptop and then have to navigate and learn how to, go through their sub menus and things like that. So yeah, so that's why I have it. It's honestly for just customer purposes, and also they do have some TV apps that I like to use. That's just on there. I'm like, hey, why not? I can stream like CWTV and ABC Family, just stuff like that, just whenever I want to. So,
yeah, I actually got a copy of Windows 8.1 free from my school. And I did just like Dontae. I downloaded the image, I installed it via Parallels, I played with it for a couple minutes because I'm a geek, I'm curious, and I planned to originally move all of my Windows applications onto the Windows 8 Parallels virtual machine and just use that, but I went right back to 7. I mean, I gave it a chance. I didn't use it for all that long, but I still did use it, and I just like 7 better.
Yeah.
And I'm not alone.
No, not at all. Especially with Windows 9 getting ready to come out. I heard they're getting ready to switch pretty much everything back to the way Windows 7 was. Because you got to realize Windows 8 on a professional level, there's not a company in the world that would adapt that across their, architecture for their company. It's ridiculous. And I'm not sure if they thought that one completely through.
Yeah, I don't think they did. Windows 8 is definitely much more of a consumer build of Windows.
Works great on a tablet, on the Surface. Works perfect for that. But anything that's not touchscreen, not sure.
Yep. If it's not a touchscreen, Windows 8 ain't for it. But here we have the processor. This is once again a 4770K. I really hope this focuses. And so basically what we do here is, actually, you know what? I'm going to put this processor back in its little compartment because I do want to show you guys the actual process of, how to install it. So I'm going to try to tip this case up. Right here you have a nice little lever with a little, I guess, I like to call these things a trap door because they kind of remind me how they go up, one way. So I call it a little
Right.
trap door. You push the hook that way and lift up, and now the socket's open. And so now all we're literally going to do is place the processor right down in on there and close her up. And it's going to feel a little bit tight. When you go to close it, you might hear some sounds. Don't worry, that's just the pins making contact with the processor. So, I mean, you're not cracking or breaking anything. So you're gonna, and there's little notches. It's gonna be really hard to see on this camera. I do apologize for that, but there are little notches, so you will install it the right way because it cannot be installed wrong. So now the processor's in right there. We're gonna close the trap door, and there we go. Processor is in place.
Nice.
I don't know why we're getting comments to say start the build. Now after the processor, what do you think? What do you typically do, Dontae? Do you go with put the cooler right on there right away, or do you kind of branch out a little bit?
Honestly, right after I go for the video card because
Video card?
I try to have as much space as possible because now these video cards are getting gigantic. I had my Hackintosh, my Alienware Hackintosh that I had, my HD6870 that I was running in there almost touched the front and back. I literally had like less than an inch of space from the back, so it was harder to route the power, the 6-pin power cables to it. So, if I had done everything all at the same time, I try to, just do that and try to see where everything's going to line up. But since it's just a simple, snap in and, and you can kind of see how much space you have first before installing the power supply.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Very good way to go. And that's, it kind of demonstrates that forward thinking of, okay, how am I going to route these cables? And so that is something that you have to think about. If you just kind of throw parts in there, then you're going to find yourself having to pull other parts out to make other parts fit. And that's how my first build was. Like when I first built my main machine years ago, I ended up having to pretty much pull the whole thing back out because I didn't want all these cables showing. I just kind of threw them in there last minute because I was so excited to boot it up. But after I verified it worked and everything, I really had to just go back in there and do it right because it was driving me nuts.
Yeah. And you guys will learn this after you build multiple machines. You'll start realizing what's the best protocol for yourself as far as cable management and things to fit. And, it's all your preference. This is not a step-by-step. You can do this pretty much any way. At the end of the day, it's going to be, all the components are going to be in the case. But coming from experience where I've had to, backtrack a few steps, like after I've already had my video card in and realized, crap, I probably should have ran the power supply cables first because now I have to maybe run a cable underneath the card or something weird, So those are just some of the things you run into by building multiple machines. You run into certain issues like that in different sizes. And, these are just some of the best practices, I think. You just kind of give yourself a space to see the footprint of the actual build because before you put it in, you don't know how it's going to stack up yet. And sometimes some people have had CPU coolers that were too big that they may have a clear side case to it. And I've seen that the CPU cooler was so close to that window that it would actually, you could see where the heat was actually warping the plastic on the window. So they had to go behind the case. So, but it happens. I mean, sometimes you just got to put it on there and check it out and go, you may have to rebuild it, And the worst thing you want to do is, let it go and then, you destroy, $1,000 worth of components, but it is what it is. It's all trial and error, especially on cases because sometimes you don't know how it's going to fit before you start going ahead and putting it in there. So just another tip you guys can look for when you're building PCs if you guys haven't built PCs before from scratch.
Yep, very good advice, my good sir. So I guess what I'll do really quick here is show you guys the cooler. Now here's the Intel cooler. Like I said earlier, it's very similar to how something like an HADI or really any liquid cooler would look. In my unboxing video, I do say this isn't quite as high quality feeling as something like an HADI. The HADI does cost a bit more, about $10 to $20 extra, but once again, one of those things, you kind of get what you pay for. But regardless, it should, in theory, once again, should, optimal word, it should cool very effectively. I mean, after all, Intel makes the processor, so they know the specs for, how to cool that processor. So this, in theory, should cool the processor very sufficiently.
And something also
So
note on this particular processor, on the cooler, actually, it does come with brackets for LGA, you know, 1330 or 1366 too, just in case, you know. So just in case, it just is not exactly dependent on that exact one. So just letting you
yeah,
guys know.
yeah, no, this is definitely an interesting design because the way I believe this works is, you know, of course, the radiator here is, you know, put on the back, you know, something like this. But
Hmm.
this, I don't think, like most coolers, that the bracket goes on the back because I don't know how well you'll be able to see this, but there's actually like little ridges here around the cooler. It's just a circle here. There's like little ridges around it, and the bracket here also has those ridges, but you know, like in the opposite cutout. So I believe this fits all like over top, and then I believe there's little pins. It's kind of like the stock Intel cooler, how you just kind of click it down into place. I think we have something very similar to that going on here. So it doesn't come from the back of the board to the front. It just goes from the front of the board to the back. And then, of course, like I said, the radiator. Actually, you know what? I'm going to do the radiator first, just because if you don't do the radiator with an all-in-one cooling solution like this, then the radiator kind of holds you back. You know, it's like flopping all over the place, and it's you can't really line it up just right. So it makes your life kind of hard. So in order to do this, we're going to need to remove this fan on the back here. It's back 120. So this is very easy to do. Pretty much any fan on a computer, it's literally just 4 screws and one in every corner, and you take the screws out. You don't necessarily need you don't really need a PhD in astrophysics. Klupper, I think your name is. The remote control is actually for my Canon Vixia. That's the high definition camera, and probably what we're gonna do, I will probably edit in some because the camcorder I'm using is recording in 1080p, whereas the webcam we're recording in is 720p and not as good of quality, you know, pixel for pixel as my camcorder. So in the final YouTube version, what we're probably gonna do is just edit in some shots from my Canon Vixia, and then you know, the close-up shots that are in the case, you know, down here. Those we don't really have another choice. We're just going to use the camera that we're using, and that'll make it to the final clip, the final project. But yeah, the remote is for my camcorder, so I can zoom in on certain things. And I'm sure one day, you know, I would like to have an in-house producer with an in-house camera switcher with in-house 1080p camcorders, and if this could be better quality. But for right now, this is just as good as we can do. And it does the job. Okay, so now that fan's out, what we're going to do is we're going to install this radiator right up onto here. Now, something I'm seeing is that this fan is in the way, so we might have to take that fan off, or what we could probably do and get away with is flip it like this so that these little tubes here are on the bottom instead of the top. I know there's people on both ends of the argument. There's people that are going to say, no, these have to be up top for the best cooling. There's going to be people that say, no, it doesn't matter. Either way, you have a liquid-cooled processor. It really shouldn't affect it all that much. But in this case, it is still too beefy, so we are going to indeed take this fan here off. So, you know, once again, very simple process. Make sure you guys can see this okay. Do something like that. And we're just going to take one of these top fans off. Dontae, are you the kind of person that has a lot of fans going in their computer?
I mean, with this Mac Pro, yes, because that's what it comes with. But in an actual, like, in the Hackintosh that I built, I normally, depending on how many the case already comes with, I like to buy like certain types of 120 millimeter fans. I'm not like the one that's going to have like 8 or 9 fans running, but I like to have at least 4 really strong fans. And then I also like to make what's called a wind tunnel system. So what I'll do is I'll have usually my fan in the front will pull air in, and then have the other ones face the opposite way to circulate air to pull it out of the back of the case. So basically, I can feel it sucking in when I put my hand up, and then make sure that it's pushing out pretty well. And usually, I've kept some pretty good temperatures with doing that. And it's just something that you basically it just depends on which way you face your fan. If you're going to have one facing one way or the other way, then you can definitely incorporate that with your cooling, because having good cooling inside a computer that especially that's going to be burning up with your processor, your RAM, and your video card is essential to keeping a stable system, and then also not having the actual environment so dry that creates static electricity and things very, very easily. So, but usually I try to stick with 120 millimeter. I've had some like in that Alienware Hackintosh. They had some weird ones. They had like 90 millimeters and like an 88 millimeter, and those are kind of hard to find. But it just depends on your preference. I mean, some people like LED fans and things like that. Say if you have a clear case, I've actually had a build in it almost looked like a Transformers Decepticon case, and it had all blue LED fans in it, and it was nice. I mean, I actually liked it, especially at night. And it just depends on your preference. But me, I was a little more into the size, the wind tunnel system, and the decibels. There are some very loud fans out there.
Yeah.
So if you guys can try to match them up before you buy them and look at the back and kind of see how many decibels they're running. And some of them are really loud, some of them are really quiet, but also some of the ones that are advertised as quiet are going to cost you more. So there's just things like that, and it just depends. But I haven't had a problem with fans as of late, and really ever. So I haven't really found the need to liquid cool on a personal build myself, and I've got a pretty decent system. I'm running 32 gigs of RAM with two Intel X5650 6-core processor, so it's a 12-core Mac Pro with 24 threads. So it's no slouch, and but just with the standard system of the fans that are in the Mac Pro, the system runs very, very stable and very cool. And I actually do have it on the floor that next to my desk, and it's not carpeted. So I got really good airflow coming through it. It stays cold, and since it's aluminum casing, it stays colder too. So that's nice to have that feature as well. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard the Mac Pro get all the way up at its full RPMs, and it really sounds like a jet.
Oh yeah.
Like as soon as you turn it up, you're like, whoa, where's the airport? Yeah, the Mac Pro gets insanely loud, but so do PC fans too. Especially like cases like mine, it actually has a fan controller on it where there's a little a knob, and you can control the volts that go to the fans, and so that'll make them go real fast. And of course, the more fans you have, the louder it's going to be. A little pro tip, I guess: try to get bigger fans, because bigger fans can move more air at slower RPMs. So it's going to cool very effectively and also be a lot quieter. But then again, not all cases support that. Actually, this case, I'll go ahead and grab it really quick. On the door, we actually have a 200 millimeter fan. So we have that. It's a really beefy fan, and it shouldn't, in theory, add a whole lot of sound to this overall build, but should still move a lot of that air out the side. So that's a good feature about this case. But so what we're going to do here, and continuing on the little talk about airflow. By the way, let us know in the comments how you like to cool your computer. Do you like to liquid cool it? Do you have an air cooler? Do you use a push-pull configuration? Whatever it is, let us know down below in the comments.
I use a commercial use box fan for mine. I just leave the case open with a box fan. No fans on the inside, man. So go to Walmart, pick one up, 1088, run that thing. It'll be just fine. Don't worry about it. That's what my dad told me. No.
I actually go to I buy air conditioners, and I just kind of have those in there. So where we're at here, now we're actually going to install the radiator to the side of the case. And here's the fan right here. And there's many ways to do this. We could put the fan on this side and have it blow air out, or we could put the fan on this side, and basically what that'll do is it'll suck air out.
Right.
So this way I tend to think is a little bit more effective. But where we're at here is how to actually go about installing this. Because it's definitely, I think the way that Intel wants us to do it is to actually have us kind of pulling the air out. I think the way they want us to do this is to have the fan like this, because they give us, hopefully you guys can see this okay, these like really long screws. I mean, they're, I'd say about 1.5 inches long. And if you sit the radiator right here, then these are going to be too long. And so I just don't really think it would work any other way. Unless maybe we're able to do something like this. Yeah, see, either way it wouldn't work. Because this is a really weird fan, because I don't know how well you guys are going to be able to see that, but this isn't really a flush square. And so there's only one of these little holes to put the screw through. And so it can really only sit one way. Or actually, it might still work. It's just a very weird design. Or actually, you know what? It can't work that way because then we're sucking air into the case. You see that? This actually has to be blowing out. So really, that's something already I don't like about this cooler, is that they don't let you choose which side you want the fan on.
Yep.
But regardless, we're just going to play with the hand that we're dealt. So here's our little 4-pin power connector for the fan. And the closest 4-pin is going to be right over here. Once again, something to keep in mind. If you go ahead and just screw this in, and your cable's over here, but your outlet's over here, then you have to do it again. You have to take the fan off, move it. So look for that stuff before you go ahead and screw stuff into your case. So once again, I guess just the way that they want us to do this is we're going to line it up like so. This is actually a really weird fan. Can't find exactly where all 4 are lined up. There we go. So actually, this is a 140 millimeter fan. I thought it was a 120. But so then, so we're just gonna run the screw there through the outside of the case. I do apologize if this isn't the best view in the world. But we run it through, and then we're simply going to screw it into this little hole into the actual radiator. And you basically just do that 4 times. So like I said, something already I'm not liking about this cooler, it doesn't give you that choice. And we just said this not too long ago. We like to have that kind of a choice. If we're going to buy components and build the computer ourselves, then I do think that they should give us a little bit more of a choice with this. But as long as it cools efficiently, then it really isn't that big of an issue. So it really depends what you want out of your machine, I guess. But I can already see that getting some eggs taken off on Newegg or some stars on Amazon, because I know there's already going to be a lot of people that they're not crazy about that. And in their defense, this isn't the most efficient way. Because I do believe putting a fan on this side and having it blow the air out rather than just passing it through and sucking it in is a bit more efficient way of cooling. And this thing does not want to. There we go. That helps. Do you think you'd rather go with a liquid cooling solution or an air cooled solution?
Personally, air cooled, because I had a kind of a disaster one time. This guy had a liquid cooled system that was custom built by a company, and he got a water block leak on his video card and was trying to get me to salvage it some sort of way. But here's a weird thing. Of course, we all know liquid and electricity don't mix, but it did boot up, but it would act really, really weird. I mean, his voltages were all over the place, and he said he tried to dry it out as best he could and whatnot without using towels or anything. And long story short, his system was done. I mean, then that's just one of those things, because it's very costly to usually do one of those systems, because like here on the Amazon.com for this Intel motherboard, it's $78.24. And your stock CPU cooler usually is going to be enough out of the box when you're building a Hackintosh. But if you prefer a different type of cooler, of course you can buy external coolers that are still fan driven and aren't liquid cooled. So if anything, I would definitely recommend maybe getting a more powerful one than the stock one is. But personally, I stay away from the liquid cool because I haven't ran into a situation where I actually needed that much cooling power. And that's just a personal preference because of having leaks and things like that you can't control, because sometimes it happens. Sometimes something so mass produced to be able to work perfectly just doesn't. And his was, because when I tried to run a test on having liquid go through it, I could not get it to leak, but I definitely did. And I can see on this board where it actually leaked. And it was really weird, and it actually cost him his build. So that's just a personal opinion. So I don't know what you guys think. Maybe down in the chat, if you guys would go with a liquid cool system, or if you just try to play it safe and stick with fan driven cooling system.
Yeah, I mean, me personally, I do use an air cooled solution. Liquid cooled solutions tend to cool a bit better, but as Dante was just saying, they come with that risk. If something does go wrong, which once again it shouldn't, but it does happen. And the company, if you call up Corsair or Intel and say, "Dude, your liquid cooler just exploded, and now all my components are just done," they're probably going to shrug their shoulders and say, "We're sorry." I don't know how much
Correct.
they're really
And
going to do.
honestly, and that's how he contacted me, because he had already tried to contact the guys that built it. And he's like, look, dude, you ran that risk when I said, what kind of cooling system did you want it? So that's how he contacted me to see if I could just try to salvage it for him. So yeah, it was a bad deal, because it cost him like
Yeah.
$2,600 to get it built. And that was before the labor, and that was just in parts before the guys built it for him. So yeah, it kind of stinks, but you kind of live and learn.
Yeah. So for this cooler, this is once again a very interesting design. And no, I haven't read the instruction manuals yet, but I'm pretty sure I have a pretty good idea how this goes. So I mentioned earlier that it has kind of these notches or these teeth on them. And so basically what I believe you do is you kind of go like this, and then you turn it so that the notches are on themselves.
Hmm.
See if I can get this just right. And then you kind of screw it down like that. So
Okay.
very weird design. Personally, not my favorite. Corsair's design is really nice, really easy, really straightforward.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, it's definitely a very interesting design. I'll give Intel that. But, especially because this isn't my computer, I probably should have a glance at the instructions. If it was my computer, I'd be more comfortable with just assuming it's right, but I would like to be sure. So, let's see, where did I put that box? There we go. If you've had any, liquid cooling nightmares, or Dante, have you ever had any experience with, personal experience with a self-built cooling system rather than like an all-in-one solution?
Yeah. Oh man, I had a problem with just a fan driven system that I had on an old AMD machine, and it didn't make a lick of sense because I had plenty of power, Molex, connectors and everything. But the problem was, one of the Molex connectors, a lot of them were linked together. On one of the connectors, I had a short in it, and it made my entire computer run like really weird. It would just restart itself, and it took forever to figure that out, because the first thing you're going to do as person in IT is check your main components, not your fans. You're going to check, my processor, is it seated correctly? My RAM, and make sure that it's not, one side up, one side down, things like that. Power supply, video card. I mean, I was checking everything. Turned out to be a short in the actual fan, and it was shorting everything out. It was really, really weird. And but after replacing that particular fan, everything worked fine. But as far as like actual cooling, I did have a time where I was running a dual GPU system. A buddy of mine had the same video card as mine. I asked him to come over to maybe see how it would crossfire and see what was going on. So we overclocked the GPU, and it got so hot. I mean, it didn't make any sense. I mean, the fans sound like they were just whistling. I mean, so we hurried up and powered it down, and but as far as like destroying something like that or anything, no. But I've come close, definitely come close. But this was way back, like before I knew a whole lot. I was just building PCs, for myself, not for other people. So being a novice in that, of course, you're going to run into some trial and error and go, oh, you don't do that, and now you do this. So yeah, that's one thing I do like about being in the IT field, is that learning curve. I mean, because I remember
Oh yeah.
I went to OS X, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was getting the majority of my information from Terrell. I didn't want to switch from Windows, and I definitely was just trying it out. Well, now it's my primary operating system. I haven't completely left Windows, as we said about Windows 7 and things like that. But it's nice to just start from scratch. You don't know, you're asking questions, trying to figure it out, looking up YouTube videos and tutorials and this Hackintosh build and stuff like that, and to be able to do it yourself and be able to take that knowledge to other platforms is really, really nice. So, and that's part of the reason why we bring this to you guys, and it's to show you exactly how to do this, and it can be done. And it's pretty nice though. But I don't know if you guys in the chat. Have you guys ever had any problems? Have you destroyed a PC? Have you spilled water inside of a computer while it was running? Things like that. Let us know, and maybe we guys can just kind of share some stories over some of the bad parts of being an IT professional. One of the bad parts is things cost money, and to stay updated, you have to always buy something, and you'll never be done
Yeah.
buying stuff. I don't know how many personal PCs I've built for myself, but I definitely will tell you this: once you build your first one, you will never go back. To just going and like, oh, I'm going to go buy like a Dell manufactured computer or something. Even if it's Windows-based parts or a Hackintosh, you will want to know every specific piece of your build yourself. If something went wrong,
Yep.
okay, that's the video card, or that's the RAM doing that, or I need to switch that fan out. And then you feel better by not having such proprietary parts to where, oh, you got to order that through Dell and it's going to take 2 or 3 weeks, and you may have to ship your whole case to them and things like that. So it's really nice for upgradability and changing things out when there is a problem.
Yep. Expense or problems are very expensive when it comes to
Yeah.
computers. A small problem can lead to thousands of dollars depending on the type of system it is. And unfortunately, nothing has ever happened like that to me personally. But trust me, I know it happens all the time. So try to stay away from that. Really, do your research, pick the right components. If you have to spend another $5 on a part that's a lot better quality, a much more trusted name, spend the extra $5. It's oftentimes very worth it. But so turns out I was wrong. We actually do need one of those back brackets because originally I thought that this was for like a socket 2011, but in reality this is the back plate, and this screws down onto it. So it is. Instructions do come in handy every once in a while. Story lesson of the day, kids. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna try our best here to line these all up. And I believe we have success. Maybe not quite yet. So actually what I'll do is I'll actually stand this computer up, and I can show you guys on the Canon Vixia, and those of you up there on the stream, as well as you can see it, how to put on the back bracket. So go ahead and zoom into this a little bit here. So there we have it. There's right there is the back of the CPU right there. And now here is that back bracket. So what we really have to do here is there's these little things here that slide up and down. The wider out is the bigger the socket. This is for socket 2011. Socket 1366 is probably somewhere in the middle. And for LGA 1150 or 1155, it's going to be all the way down because that is the smallest chipset. And
right.
Which, by the way, the number really actually corresponds to the number of pins on the chip. So the bigger the number, the bigger the processor.
Right.
Fun fact.
Yep. And
Okay,
LGA
so
actually stands for land grid array. It's a type of architecture that how the processor goes into the actual socket.
There you go.
Okay.
You learn something new every day.
Yeah.
We provide.
There is also like
awesome
pin grid
here.
arrays and things like that. Those are some of the older ones. I actually have a old AMD processor, and see, it actually has pins. So
Yeah, that's one thing Intel does different from AMD. Intel
Yeah.
puts the pins in the socket, and AMD puts them on
In the
chip
socket.
that goes in.
correct.
Which I think Intel has the much better implementation. It's much harder to bend the pin if it's in the socket.
Definitely. I have my old quad core chips, my 2.26 gigahertz Xeon cores, and you guys can see how that chip actually is opposed to the actual AMD's pins. So this is an AMD processor here, and this is the Intel Xeon processor here. And notice the difference in size as well. This is a old dual core. I think it's like a AMD 6000 or something like that. X64 Athlon X2, old processor, made in 2001. I mean, pretty old, and that's a difference in size on a Xeon chip and that particular AMD chip. And then you can see the back here of the different array of how the pins are actually set versus a land grid array and a pin grid array that's on the actual chip of AMD versus the chip that's on the Intel Xeon processor. These are the old chips that actually came with my 2009 Mac Pro. And you know, it's nice. I mean, because it's a quad core, so this is one of the more upgraded versions of that particular Mac Pro when it came out. So very nice. But I since then did a EFI firmware hack to make my computer think it's a 2010 Mac Pro, and I'm actually using processors that are not even supported with my particular board, and it works just fine. You know, the dual 6-core processors are really nice.
Yeah, must be nice. Yeah, that is interesting though. That it's purely software that Apple changed. I mean, there's no hardware
from
difference
2009 to 2010, and it's so weird. Some of the things they've changed. Beforehand, in 2009, I couldn't get audio out of my mini display ports. Now, with the EFI firmware hack, I can. And another thing was running RAM at 1066 megahertz. Now I can run it at 1333. And I'm actually using 32 gigs of RAM of Corsair Vengeance RAM. So I highly recommend that particular RAM. It is awesome. But like Bob said, the price of RAM has been going up lately. And I'm not quite sure why, because even on the standard like 1600 megahertz DDR3 RAM, the prices are getting pretty pricey right now, and I'm not quite sure why. I don't know if there's maybe something else new. Maybe they're trying to hurry up and get these things out or what, but I would figure that the price would drop when they're trying to push things out to get more consumers to buy it. But it's a really weird phase with RAM right now. I'm not quite sure what's going on. Maybe we'll do some research and figure out what's going on with that, and we can host that on Tech Habit Weekly and cover that story for you guys, give a little more information about that subject. But very nice. Very, very, very nice.
Yeah,
I
similar thing happened with hard drives a couple years ago. Hard drive prices went up like insanely a couple years back, and now they've kind of leveled out a little bit. But I remember back in the day, you could get a 2 terabyte hard drive for cheaper than you could now. But okay, so the Intel cooler, I have figured it out, and actually I hope I don't have to, because that back bracket fell out. So just as I'm like, I have it like perfect, ready to go, and I have to go fix that. First world problems. But yeah, hopefully you guys can see this okay. I'm gonna pull some arm cam really quick here. My MacBook went to sleep, and now I can't see the chat. So what we're gonna do here is the back bracket is now being pushed up, and these little teeth, it does in fact go the way I thought it did. And you know what? Actually, I don't know if the best way to show it would be to stand it up. Or either way, gravity's kind of fighting me here. This is really hard to do with one person, actually, just because that back bracket keeps wanting to fall out.
Right.
What if I could prop something up back there to keep that from happening? This is the stuff you have to do, kids. This is going to be interesting. This will be fun. So what we're going to try to do here is get these teeth back onto the actual cooler with one hand. Or actually, you know what I'm going to do first? I completely forgot about this. One thing also that's nice about the HADI is that it has the cooling paste pre-applied. This does not. They actually give you little pouches of thermal paste. We have 2 of these. And so we're just going to squirt some right on the processor. Not too much. A lot of people overdo it. And I could probably put like the size of like a quarter of a grain of rice, and I'll still have people say, "Oh, that's way too much. What are you doing?" But you cover, I'd say, about the size of a grain of rice is more than likely going to be just fine.
Oh yeah. When I actually took out the quad cores, it literally was like barely any paste on it, and that's a good example right there. I mean, coming from such a expensive consumer product from Apple back in the back when it was brand new, that's how much paste was actually applied. Then that lets you know that that's going to work just fine. And yeah, just do not overdo it. I actually had a issue recently of overdoing my paste on the 6-core processors. I didn't realize I had that much. It's just once you put it on there and start moving around, you realize that paste spreads out a lot. So just be careful, guys, when applying thermal paste. And you can get thermal paste pretty much anywhere externally. I like to actually use thermal paste, And I have some here, a TG2 model thermal grease that you can get from Thermaltake, only because for the price that it actually is, you get a lot of thermal paste. And it's just one of those things that it's good to keep handy. But normally, like I said, you don't need a lot, but it does come in handy. I don't like to really buy this very often. I might have probably bought thermal paste maybe twice ever. And I had one that was a really small syringe. I used it on a bunch of processors, and then I finally it ran out, and like the last little bit of it dried up. So I went ahead and got this one because that one actually, I didn't handle that one right. It was exposed to air, and that's what made it dry out. But like I said, Thermaltake is really good, and for the price, you can't really beat it. I wouldn't go real crazy with thermal paste. I wouldn't spend like, $15-16 on a single thing of thermal paste. Just be careful on some of those brands. I mean, I try to go with a brand that I know is pretty reputable and pretty good with dealing with cooling. I mean, I wouldn't buy, T-Mobile's thermal paste to put on my computer. Just saying,
I would use their banking though.
Yeah, you're a better man than I am, Bob. You like living on the edge, don't you?
Oh yeah.
If you want to make that gamble, just send me your money.
If you don't know what we're talking about, check out the last episode of Tech Habit Weekly. There's a story we talk about where T-Mobile wants to become your bank, literally with checking accounts and stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, we get pretty into it. It's an interesting episode.
Yeah.
But back here, I was actually able to get that screwdriver underneath the case and prop that bracket up against the back, so we're good. So now all I have to do is screw the thing on. And so as you can see, we have some screws here. They go through the cooler, or rather through the bracket, and then we simply screw these into place. And just like many other things in life, I tend to do the opposite corners first. Make sure those are secured into place.
Mm-hmm.
We may have a problem here, actually. I don't think they gave us another bracket, and even at its smallest, this looks too big. And Newegg does say this is socket 1150. It is socket 1150 compatible. I wonder, is there a difference in size between like the bracket size of 1155 and 1150?
Oh, you know what? That's a very good question.
I'm not sure.
I'm looking at it here. It does says it supports the whole 1150 like X series. So
yeah. If it's not supported, then we're getting our money back.
Yeah, definitely. And just like we said, it should work because of what it says in the description.
Yeah, exactly. And I think even on Amazon, it does, I think, explicitly say 1150. I'm pretty sure.
Amazon says 1150X.
Oh,
so
does it?
Like the 1155 like series. So that's what I'm getting from that.
I wonder.
Wow.
I guess it would be worth a Google search to see if the sizes are different, or if you guys in the chat know. The processor itself is only 5-pin difference. I can't imagine. I mean, we're looking at I really can't show you guys. Even I can barely see it, but we're looking at a good, I'd say, centimeter of difference. I mean, it's significant. Yeah, if this isn't going to work, then we're just going to have to use the stock cooler for now, unfortunately. But yeah, especially
yeah,
Intel,
I've got to search that 1150, 1155, 56. They're the same socket. That's what it says.
Really?
And I just did my own search here about that.
I mean, unless this can only go one way, but as far as I knew, it was a perfect square. I don't know. We'll see what we could do here. I'm going to try to rotate this and see if that works.
It would
be nice if there was something that's simple.
Bathroom break, ladies and gentlemen. But go ahead and keep chatting in the chat. I'll try to answer as many questions as I can that come through. So I'll be right back. Just a second.
Alrighty, sir. All right, so we're going to see if this will work this way, but see, I don't think it's going to. This is very interesting, and I don't think that they gave us another bracket. Yeah, everyone in the chat here, you're all saying that it's the same size, but this definitely doesn't fit. I really wish I could, have a camera like right here to show you guys, but it's definitely off. And there is no other bracket. This could be a problem. Does anyone in the chat room, have you guys used this cooler before? Anybody? Or actually, I might have it, but it doesn't look like it's straight. So yeah, I think I have it, but I mean, it's just, it feels kind of weird. I feel like I kind of have to like bend the screws a little bit, like inwards, in order for it to screw in right. And I would say you shouldn't have to do that, especially coming from Intel. This doesn't seem right. It's definitely the weirdest designed cooler I think I've ever seen. Yeah, I did try to rotate the bracket. It's the same thing. I'm pretty sure it's like a perfect square. See, as it stands now, I'll try to show you guys from the front, but I really don't know how well you're going to be able to see it. So I'll try to bring the case up closer here to the front. So once again, not sure how well you guys can see this. But from the back, it does look like, the back bracket's definitely in correctly. There's no question about that. But I'm pretty sure here that this bracket does not want to, or like the top piece doesn't want to actually go into the screw holes of the bracket.
Wow.
So yeah, I mean, I know the live version really isn't good quality, and for the YouTube version, I'll try to get my head out of the shot as much as possible. And even with the camcorder, it looks nice, but you can't really see the dilemma. But I'm 99% sure this just doesn't fit.
Wow. What are the odds of that?
I know. I mean, it's from Intel. Yeah, this is really weird. I mean, you can see it. It's flexing like that. It's definitely not in, and it doesn't want to be in either. That's the problem. So I mean, for the purposes of the stream, I might just go with the stock cooler, and troubleshoot that on my own time. But that's definitely disappointing.
Yeah.
And especially because, I mean, the sockets are the same size according to everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, it just doesn't fit. I'm not even going to try anymore. Okay.
Which this kind of sucks too, because we already applied the thermal paste, and this has paste pre-applied.
And that's where the handy rubbing alcohol and Q-tips and things like that come in handy.
Yeah.
That stinks.
Yeah, I mean, we got a good amount here on the cooler, so yeah, that's really weird, and I hope you guys can see this. We can try this, it's without the brick in the way, to see if you guys can see it any better. But here's what we're looking at. We have a pretty standard looking bracket with 4 screws. And the problem is, these guys, like, one of them will be in fine, but then every other one is off by like a centimeter. And you can really kind of, move the screw, like kind of bend it diagonally, and it'll fit, but you just know that that's not right. So
Wow.
I would rather not do it at all than to do it bad and to have it not right. But I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm placing it down like right now, right beside the holes, and this one is at least a good centimeter off. It's like above where the actual hole is.
Okay. Hmm.
So yeah, we'll have to do some research on that. But everyone in the chat room says that it's the exact same size.
Yeah. Like I said, I just searched and it was like, yeah. I'm like, okay. I'm on
But you
Intel's
know why this happened?
website.
This happened because it's live.
Yeah. That's right. Unedited, raw, pure. See, no one wants the truth. This happened. If this was
Exactly.
an actual video, that would have been edited out. So this is really
Exactly.
gritty right now. You guys are seeing the
This is the
core
real
of
world.
what happens. See,
All
the
right.
world's
Well,
not a safe place.
no, it's really not. It's very dangerous actually. But yeah, I'll go ahead and research that on my own time. But Dontae, what do you use to cool or not cool, clean your processors with? Because I don't believe I have any rubbing alcohol. I do have some Q-tips and things like that. So I guess that'll
Um,
have to suffice.
Basically, just your standard rubbing alcohol you can get in any grocery store or
Pharmacy.
convenience store, pharmacy. And I use honestly whatever's like the cheapest around because I literally do have like a bottle that I only use for my cleaning processors and things. And then I found a pack of Q-tips that were like this big. I mean, there's probably like 100 in there. And that's what I use. I just keep that little thing around and clean them up. And normally I only need to clean them up for two reasons. Usually if I'm parting out a build and then I'm packaging up my processor with the CPU cooler and everything in the box and getting ready to put it on eBay or something like that, I clean the processors and the fan and things up pretty well. Or if like on this Mac Pro, I had to actually take out my two quad core processors and clean them up and just to basically store them away so I can get ready to put my two 6 core processors in. So it doesn't happen a lot only because usually if I'm going to sell a system, I'll either sell it the exact way it is. But my last build, my Alienware, I did actually part it out. So like I said, just standard rubbing alcohol and Q-tips, and it takes it right off, and it works pretty well.
Yeah, I don't think I do have any rubbing alcohol, so we're just gonna get as much off as we can with standard Q-tips, I guess. Because, like you said, you really don't want to have too much. I mean, this would really be like double with the
Yeah,
cooler the paste that's on the cooler already. So
right.
I'm going to get some Q-tips.
All right. And yeah, and I don't know if you guys have actually, had a brand new processor, out of the box, but normally when you take it off, there's like a plastic little shroud that holds where the actual processor meets the heat sink meets the processor on the board. And once you actually take that off, that's where that pre-installed grease is, and that's what we're talking about. So he's got to do one of two things: either take the grease off of the cooler itself or taking off the process. So it's one of those things that, like you said, is going to end up being double, which can cause a problem because there's going to be too much space and not enough bond in between the heatsink and processor, and you can run into problems where your system won't boot. Matter of fact, I ran into that problem with the Mac Pro, which was scary because it was the first time I had upgraded the processors in a Mac Pro. This is my first time ever owning a Mac Pro, and I was running EFI update firmware hack that I wasn't sure was going to work. People said it did, but I actually had to take a chance to spend the money and do it. So when I put too much paste on it and it didn't boot, believe me, I was like sick to my stomach when it happened. I mean, it was weird. Like all of my RAM wasn't showing up. It was weird when it actually did boot. But then I took some off, reapplied it. It was perfect. No problems. Everything comes up,
Yeah.
everything boots. All 32 gigs of RAM shows, 1333 megahertz, everything runs. And, just one of those trial and error things. I haven't ran into that before until this. And that basically just let me know, okay, just be a little careful on the thermal paste. And honestly, the processors are bigger, so I felt, well, it was the first time I've had Xeon cores, so it's a bigger processor, put a little more paste on
Keep it cool.
there. Yeah. So, but it all worked out. It was just one of those life lessons, and you come to learn that when you're doing these things, and then you start running into, when you start building computers, you can start doing them really, 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 really fast, and because the curves, the things that you're going to encounter beforehand. But I built my first PC. It probably took me 2 days to build it, and and it was because I was doing a lot of putting stuff in and taking it out to run other stuff, and oh crap, I forgot about this, and yeah, I forgot to run that pin, and whoa, that's why I don't have a hard drive activity light, that type of thing. So, but as you get into it, the things that are going to be tricky, the things that are going to be very tight on your fingers. and things like that, and you'll be able to do it quickly, like the way I do it now. I actually do have a service that I provide for people where I build custom computers, and a lot of time it's just building it from scratch. A lot of people, they just don't like having a desktop, and they know that they can build one cheaper with buying their own parts versus going to a manufacturer. So a lot of time I just build Windows-based computers. They'll buy the software, send me the parts, I build it and build them, and have it, give them an itinerary and everything, and it's good to go. And of course, just like Bob has his clients with Hackintoshes, but those are more specific builds. Mine are just basic parts. I build AMD machines and Intel machines. It doesn't really matter. It's just mostly on the customer's preference over what they're having, especially when they're running a Windows machine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So it's cool. I mean, you'll
Yeah.
start to
So
see you'll turn a lot more around.
yeah, you guys can see here. The difference is notice the on this side is definitely just a hair wider than the stock Intel cooler. I mean, just to if you're just looking at it real quick, just at a glance, it looks about right, but it definitely is, like a bit wider. It's like the length of one of these screws. It's like that, add one of those to the side of it, and it's about that much bigger. So that's very interesting. As far as what everyone said, they should be the same size, but based on this, they're just not, which is really weird.
Yeah, and like I said, I was on Intel's website, and it was like this socket, this socket, this socket, same category. The other ones was in another
Yeah,
category, so that's
that's weird.
really weird.
Yeah, I mean, I really don't. Maybe they shipped like the wrong bracket in the box or something, but I don't know. But so whatever, we're gonna make the best of the hand we're dealt. But here we go. Here's the stock cooler, and I'll research that on my own time, try to get back in there. And what's nice is that I think Intel knew this was going to happen because they gave us two things of thermal paste. So we do have
Yeah.
we do have an extra one floating around here, so they knew that was going to happen. So at least they included two. So if I do end up figuring it out why it wasn't lining up, which seems pretty cut and dry, I would assume it does or it doesn't. But regardless, if I do figure it out, I'll apply it on the outside of this video and let you guys know on Twitter. But here's the stock cooler. There's that pre-applied thermal paste we were talking about. Of course, this will cool nowhere near as good as a dedicated liquid cooling solution. But regardless, it does the job better than no cooler at all. So we're gonna go with that. And one last thing, I actually have to remove this bracket now. But yeah, as Dontae said earlier, I mean, the stock cooler will be okay for most people, unless you're going to overclock or be doing a lot of video editing or things that always use the processor. Unless you're going to be doing that kind of stuff, you more than likely can, in fact, go with the stock cooler. Okay. Well, that was easy. Stock cooler has been installed. So now we're going to run our little power cable here all the way up to the CPU power, or CPU fan power, really. All right, so that's installed. Now that took a lot longer than we wanted it to, but at least our processor is now being cooled. So Dontae, what do you want to jump to next? You want to do some GPU stuff, or we can install some RAM?
Let's do the RAM. That'll be pretty easy to get out of the way. It's pretty,
Okay.
straightforward, and there's really no real way to do it wrong. It's idiot proof. If it does not slide in, if you are forcing it, you are doing it wrong. It's on what's called a zero insertion force architecture, which is ZIF, and you should not have to apply very much pressure to get it to click down into the board. And then also, before you do it, check the pins and see where the actual split is in between your pins before installing it, and that way you can line it up before destroying your board or your RAM. Because I've seen people bend pins. So
Very good advice. So here we have some Corsair Vengeance. This, once again, is not the low-profile version. This has another big heatsink on it. The design is definitely unique. Corsair Vengeance has always had a very unique design. And so here we go. And so what we're going to do here is I've always had luck. I really don't think it matters because I have installed the RAM in both, these slots here that are farther away from the processor and also the ones that are closer to the processor. So whenever you install RAM in this type of a socket here, you want to match up the colors. So as you can see, it alternates. We have like the gold, black, gold, black. You're going to want to use either both golds or both blacks. You're not going to want to use one of each. But so I've had experience installing in just the gold and experience installing just the black, and it has booted either way. Which way is optimal? I believe in our case here, it's going to be the gold ones. It's going to be the ones that are farther from the CPU. I'm not positive. Don't quote me on that, but that's what I believe, and that's how I always do it, and so I've never had problems. So, but as Dontae said, as you can see right here in the actual RAM, there's a little off-center notch. It's off-center because, as he said, it's kind of dummy-proof. It's either centered or it's not. It's in the right place or it's not. So all you do is literally line it up, and you push straight down, and just like that, you have 8 gigs of RAM. And now we're going to do that one more time for a total of 16, which I think 16 gigs of RAM nowadays, it's kind of the sweet spot. Many people are perfectly fine with 8, some people even 4, but I would say 16 is a pretty good place for like 90% of the population.
Definitely. I mean, because we're now getting to the point where like 8 gigs of RAM to me is like standard. I mean, me, if you're doing anything less than that, I'd consider buying some more RAM. I mean, because it's getting pretty bad. I mean, a lot of these applications are becoming more intense, and being able to drive more off that RAM and be able to access your applications and store the applications there is very good to be able to have that. And it's just like power. You can never have enough RAM. You can have as much as possible. It doesn't mean you might utilize all of it, but it's always better to have more RAM than less.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Hence why I have 32 gigs of RAM. I mean, I'm not using 32 gigs of RAM, but I do keep virtual machines and things. There's virtual machines open right now. There's one virtual machine that it just stays open.
Stuff open.
Yep. So very, very nice. And it's not hurting. I mean, I can look at my processor's activity, and everything is just running at a smooth rate. My temperatures are fine. And being able to have that is just great to be able to run applications and games and things like that. So very good, very good. 64-bit processing is perfect. I love it.
Yes. All right. I think we'll go ahead and we'll jump onwards to the graphics cards. How about that?
Yes.
Okay. So here we have the 2 graphics cards. Once again, we're using EVGA branded. Very nice cards, 2 gigabytes of GDDR5 memory on each card. So it's going to be an awesome build for gaming, content production, and anything really that you want to do with it. This board will be pretty darn good at. So we have some connectors here. I'm going to get these out of the way so they don't fall all over the place. We have stuff on this side as well. So of course nowadays you get like posters and all this crazy stuff. You get stickers, driver CD. So here's the card. Yeah, I mean I don't ever use those things. So
yeah, my SSD is faster than yours, stuff like that.
Yeah, that kind of stuff. Yeah. All right, so here we have the card, and this is close to the reference design. This has a little different spin on the cooling system, but in terms of dimensions, the colors, the overall look, it's very close to the reference design card. But here we go. This is, I believe, superclock right out of the box, which means that it is overclocked. At least I think so. Yes, this is superclock. So this has also a higher frequency than the reference card as well. So there's where on the back of the PCB where the GPU actually sits. This has CUDA cores. I believe yes, it has an 8-pin power as well as a 6-pin power. So you have to make sure that your power supply has those connections. They do include some converters. Like here's a dual 6 to an 8 if your power supply doesn't have that. In my personal build, I have some crazy stuff going on. I have a dual Molex to 6, and then in that 6, I'm using another 6 that's native to the power supply as an adapter to get to an 8. So I have like this crazy layout inside my case right now. But that's just how we do things. My power supply is kind of at its limits. I've literally every single connection on it is being used right now. So next time I want to upgrade something, I'm either gonna have to find some kind of a crazy adapter. Sometimes it's kind of they have like those adapters that also have like a power outlet on them, so you can kind of do
Yeah.
double. That's kind of cheaty, but it works. Okay, so what I have to do here is now on the back here of the case, this is the PCI slots that the cards are going to go in. We have to punch out these little back ones here. Now some cases these are just screwed in and you just unscrew them and they come out. These actually have to be punched out, so you can't put these back in once they've been punched out. Personally, not a huge fan of that design, but at the end of the day, like I said earlier, it's just not the best quality case in the world either. So you get what you pay for once again. So match up which actual ones will need punched out, and then you just kind of bend it, flex it, and now you might as well just throw it out because we will never need that again. Now what we're going to do is we're going to take the card. Actually, wait, I'm sorry, this is a double width card, as most are nowadays, so we have to punch out 2 of these. So there's the second one. Now we're going to take the card and simply just push right down on the PCI slot. Push straight down, and now we've installed the graphics card. Now I'm curious, how many people out there, be sure to leave your comment down below or in the live chat, if you've built a Hackintosh, do you do a lot of gaming on it? Do you wish, in retrospect, do you wish you went with a higher end card? Personally, has that ever happened to you, Dontae, where you got a new computer thinking you're going to do one thing with it and one thing only, but then you realize, once you have this power, I could also be doing this.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time. I mean, there's like 3 categories of things that you can never have too much of. Video power. I mean, as many gigabytes as you can actually fit on a video card, you could never have too much RAM or too much power supply. And running games on my Hackintosh was perfect. I ran them in Windows, never really had a problem. But I wish I had opted to get a higher end graphics card at the time. I only had like a 1 gigabyte 6870 by Radeon, and it was a good card. It was stable because of the I'm glad it had the actual mini display ports and things like that to accommodate me, and all the throughputs that I need as far as the video inputs was perfect for me. But I just wish I got a higher end one because there were some certain games that really struggled on it. Crisis, I had to play it like on low settings and things like that. But you can never have enough. I mean, if there's a card out there with 16 gigs on it, I want it, because you'll be able to run everything as high as possible, and something for the like extreme gamer or the premium user, or like the new Fire Pro graphics cards that are like in the new 2013 Mac Pro. You can actually buy those separately, but they are expensive, and they have a model that's boasts 6 gigabytes of actual VRAM on it, and it is very, very nice. I'm not sure what the base clock, the boost clock, or the memory clock or anything like that on. I don't really have those specs right up hand, but it's something that's going to be astronomical because this particular card here is a 256-bit card, and it supports dual link DVI, regular, the standard DVI, HDMI display port, and it's SLI ready and everything, and it's really nice. I mean, even the base clock is high. Normally, if you get a base clock that's over 850 megahertz and above, you got a pretty decent card. And this one, it boasts a 1072 megahertz card and a boost clock of 1137 and a memory clock of 6008 megahertz on it. And it's one of the CUDA core type processors, and it's very, very nice to have 2 gigs of GDDR5 graphics memory on it. So it's not a slouch at all. It's a nice card, yeah. And you'll be able to play Assassin's Creed and different games that like really, really hurt the system that's going to hurt the video, and they should be able to perform pretty well. So, but like mostly it's inputs. I mean, how are you running? Do you have cinema displays? Do you have regular 1080p displays? Are you running those 1080p displays in HDMI? Are you running them DVI? More likely, no VGA, and that's why this particular card does not have a VGA right on the card. But of course, there's adapters and ways to still get VGA out of DVI, out of the DVI ports and things like that. But it's all your preference, and another one of those, you get what you pay for. This one, I don't want to say this card's not particularly cheap.
You can never say that enough.
Oh yeah, you can. I mean, some people they always want to build a PC for, $200, and I'm like, well, you're gonna have a $200 PC then. It's
Exactly.
gonna be, an AMD dual core something, with,
Yep.
2 gigs of RAM and 350-watt power supply and maybe just some or, some random CD burner or something in it and just a regular vanilla colored case. Like you're not gonna have too much. And
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, but these things are very good investments. I mean, I love having these, different forms of technology and being able to future-proof yourself. And if you're going to actually spend some money, make sure you know what you're getting into. I mean, if you're going to build a budget PC for $200 or $250 or something, don't expect to play, Crisis on full settings and be able to do all this video rendering and things like that because you just don't have compatible hardware for that price. Unless you come on a very good deal, which would be
It's a
hard to
very
do.
good deal.
If you came up on something very nice and someone was getting rid of their entire build, you just gonna have to put the money into it. And it stinks. I mean,
Yeah.
you got to think about these guys that race cars, no one's taking, a 98 Honda Civic out there trying to race against a Lamborghini. It's just one of those things. You're gonna have to spend some
You
money.
could try.
Yeah, you try. My money's on the Lamborghini, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I mean, if a PC, I mean, it's a pretty big investment. I mean, computers are everywhere; they're becoming more important in everyday life. I mean, if you're gonna put money into a computer, just do it right the first time. I mean, don't spend $200 on some computer that's gonna leave you wanting a lot more when you could have just waited a little longer and put that $200 into a system that you're really gonna want. Really
Exactly.
last you a while.
And then on the flip side of that, don't spend $2,000 on a computer that you're only going to play web-based games. You
Exactly.
know,
Yeah.
so I've seen it go both ways. I've seen people build ridiculous computers. I'm like, so what are you doing? Doing some Photoshop or some editing? Or they're like, no. I'm like, well, what are you doing? I mean,
What's that?
I don't know. I get on
Facebook.
Facebook and look at some YouTube videos and emails and I download music from iTunes and I'm like,
And if I'm feeling really
really?
sassy, I'll do all those at the same time.
Right. I'm like, well, you need a netbook, so or a tablet. I'm like, you got to be kidding
Yeah.
me,
Go on a vacation instead. Don't buy this.
right. But for what we're doing, I mean, Bob as well as myself, we have triple monitor setups and have decent, higher like mid to high range PCs, and we're doing video editing and exporting and gaming and a lot of different things that we actually need the components to do. There's actually 4 monitors actually hooked up to my Mac Pro. There's a Samsung 27-inch monitor here that's actually hooked up to it as well. But mainly, I'm running my triple monitor setup for everything that I normally do, and and I needed the compatible hardware. I got 2 video cards in it. I'm using a 5870 from AMD, and also the stock NVIDIA GT120 that it came with, and I actually power like my one of my monitors on there, and it's nice. And then it's the Samsung's running off the GT120, and yeah, it's really nice. I mean, but I need to have those things. I'm actually thinking about putting a USB 3.0 SATA card in my Mac Pro just to get that faster throughput coming
Yeah.
out, just to basically future proof myself because, things are getting slow. I mean, USB 2.0 has been out for a very long time, but the architecture and capacity of our things are getting bigger and bigger. So, like Bob said, as far as external drives and things, it takes a lot longer to back up. Well, the problem is I do have a USB 3.0 external hard drive, but it's only going to run 2.0 because of my USB bus speed. So, that may be something I want to invest in to just put that in there, and also maybe a Blu-ray drive inside the Mac Pro just to have. I mean, normally I'm not real big on optical media. My last Hackintosh didn't get a optical drive until I sold it, and I had a Mac Mini, a 2012 Mac Mini after that, and it didn't have an optical drive. I had 15-inch 2011 MacBook that I took the optical drive out to put another hard drive in, and it's just things like that. Optical media is not very big. You can pretty much do everything streaming or on a flash drive nowadays. So let me know if you guys are actually still using optical media, or do you feel like it's just dead in the water to you, like it is to me? If I'm using any optical media, it comes from school, and that's just because that's how they give you the programs. And but
Yeah.
if I can download it, I'm not touching it, even if
I
it takes
am.
me hours. and you can give me the disc now, I'll take the download. I don't like having my
Exactly.
physical
I'm the
stuff
same way.
home
I mean,
through,
I can't really honestly remember the last time I actually like ran something from a disk in my personal
Yeah.
computer.
Yep.
I can't.
Yep. Just one of those things, it's been out for a long time, and to me, unless it's like Blu-ray or something like that, but but like physical, like CDs and DVDs, nah, not me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can get anything off iTunes. Well, mostly anything. You can get, I would say, anything in a digital format, unless it's something like maybe really old that was literally only found on vinyl, and it maybe wasn't like something as famous as the Beatles, and so they never really took the time to make it digital. Other than those rare cases, you can get like anything digital nowadays, so why not? It's just so much more convenient. Now that we have these huge, like 2, 3, I'm sure pretty soon, if they're not out already, 4 terabyte hard drives.
Yeah.
So I see
And
no need to go optical anymore. I just don't.
no, yeah, I mean, it's just there's no point. Number one, how much faster flash storage and things are. I mean, it would just have the
Yep.
DMG or the executable file. It's just right there. You don't have to worry about it spinning. You don't have to worry about it scratching or anything like that. So we're good. That's just me. I try to talk people out of it when I see them. Oh, let me see if I can find my printer software. I'm like, are you kidding me? Go on the website and type in your model number and download the drivers. I mean, you got to be kidding me. You're still doing that, and like, it irks me. I'm like, what are you doing? No.
Let's see. Ben DeWeese. Here's that bracket. I was looking at it. It looks like it can move, but I tried. It doesn't. It looks
Yeah,
like
and
it's
it's best
adjustable.
not to force stuff. If you feel like you're putting like some good force, just stop. Try to go with
Yep.
a different option because you don't want to risk tearing something up and then not being able to return it.
Yep.
So yeah, I just a
I,
rule of
I, I would
thumb.
much rather just wait and then maybe get like an Intel chat support or something just to
Yeah.
see.
Mm.
Because I mean, if worst comes to worst, we could always return it and just buy a different cooler. But if you go and you try to make it right and you end up breaking it, then you're just out what 70, $80.
Right.
I'm not going to do that once again, especially because it's not my computer. I'm not going to force something and break it, so it's just not worth it. If it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit, and I'll continue to do my research on it. But definitely based on the way it's advertised across all the sites, there is definitely should work with this socket. That really baffles me. But regardless, we're going to move on from that. We do have both the cards installed, so this already looks awesome. Like especially with the colors of the motherboard, I think this looks really great. I do wish the SLI bridge here was a bit different in color rather than just like this random kind of orange, whereas this is all like yellow. But it
Yeah.
works.
Yeah.
Whatever. Also, as you can see, what I did there, I installed the Wi-Fi card as well.
Yeah.
Very simple to do. It's even easier than a graphics card. It's a much smaller
Yep. Flow
slot,
straight
so
down.
we just
Good to go.
drop it in. So really
Yep.
easy to do there. I think we're really getting down to it here. I think all we really have left would be the Blu-ray drive and the hard drives
And the hard drives. Yeah.
slash solid state drives.
Yeah.
So I guess we'll just start off. We'll throw one of the SSDs in and one of the
Okay.
hard drives in.
Cool. This
And now
particular
for this case,
SSD. Is that
this
that's
case,
240 gig, right? Correct.
yes, the solid states
Yes.
are
Okay.
240. Yep.
Cool.
And one thing that's again not that great about this case is that the drives don't go in on sliders. They actually have these that go into like the holes of the hard drive, and then you slide those in. But the thing is, solid state drives won't fit. So you actually need to get one of those adapters, which I have here. This is a 3.5 to 2.5 inch adapter. So it'll make the solid state drive fit in a form factor that's the same size as this hard drive. And then from there, we could go ahead and install it, however we need to. So we're gonna take this out of the box, and actually, you know what? I think we'll just install the hard drive first, just because it's primed and ready to go. So these guys, as you can see, there's like a little lip on this one coming out. That's going to be on our side, so we can pinch them together and then pull the drive out. So this is going to go this way. And there's no screwing anything in. You'd really just pop it into place, and you're good to go. And we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So once again, line them up. And then once you do that, you just find the track and you slide it into place. It makes a very satisfying clicking noise, and it's definitely, secured in there. We're good to go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bust out this adapter. And so this is what that adapter looks like. These are actually from Silverstone. These are about, I don't know, like $8 or so on Amazon. So instead of just having your solid state drive just, chilling in there, just like flapping about, you can secure it down with something like this, which is really nice, especially in my case, because I will be shipping this computer out. It's going to be going through the mail. It's going to be, bumping around in a truck. So you don't want to have that drive just jumping around inside the case. So you definitely have to secure it down. And so that's what we're going to do. So I have the solid state drives right here. We'll go ahead and we'll crack this one open. So once again, this is a PNY 240 gigabyte solid state drive. This is actually my first PNY solid state. I've never unboxed one of these before. I've never seen one, held one, felt one, loved one, used one. So we're going to do all those things right now. And yes, the Hackintosh juice knife has made a return. Say your name on the stream. Andrew McMonigal. There you go. Hopefully I made your day.
McMonigal? Yeah. Cool.
All right, so taking the solid state drive out of here. Look at that. They even give us a SATA cable. Very nice.
That's weird.
Yeah, most companies don't.
That's like the first I've seen. and you know what? Man. I think it's because it's 2.5 inches. So a lot of people might think, well, they're probably gonna put this in a laptop or something. Of course we know a laptop you're not pulling a SATA cable normally. There are some Windows-based laptops that actually do have like the actual cable. Most of the time, it just plugs right into the board with the SATA connector. So, but that was nice. That's cool that they did that.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know if companies are just being more generous now, but we already have 10 SATA cables that came with the board, and now we have two more that came with each, like one with each drive. So we have like 12 SATA cables here, when normally you're lucky to get like 4.
Right.
So regardless, here's the solid state drive. Really nice drive. It's just a really simple design. I like the black. And this also, I want to say, matches the board. So it has like that black and gold theme going on, which looks really nice. And so here on the converter, the solid state drives can really go in either way. They have screw holes on the bottom and on the sides. And so this particular model here of this converter, I guess we'll call it, it has the holes on the side. So this is going to be installed like this and secured into place, and then we can put the sliders on the adapter. So what we're going to do, and I know they gave us screws with this, I just can't find where I put them. I don't know if I put them back in the box. I don't think these are them. No, those are not. Actually,
man, those SSDs are expensive.
So. What, these PNY ones?
Yeah.
How much are you looking at?
Amazon.com, $226.
Really? Wow, we paid a fair bit less for ours. See, that's one of those good deals we were talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we ended up paying
about
$150 or so.
Yeah, those brackets are pretty stable too. I mean, they will not move at all. I mean, normally I only put 2 screws in them. I only do like one in the top, like say top left corner, and then the other in the bottom right corner or something. Yeah, so yeah, they're really cool and they work right. So
yeah, that's the nice thing about solid state drives too, though, is that they're not big and they don't weigh much. They don't need that much support either.
Yeah.
Okay, so this will be really tricky to try to show on camera. And it's going to be tricky to actually kind of do because we have to go through like 2 layers. I really don't know how well you can see this, but we can't actually screw the drive in until way up here. But we have to go through this little hole with our screwdriver in order to get to that. And then there's a good, half-inch gap there. So let's see here. Yeah, that screwdriver will fit. The problem with this screwdriver is that it's not magnetic, so this will be like extra fun. I don't know why that pesky gravity always has to be against us.
Use the force, Bob.
The force is strong with this one.
Yes. Hackintosh, you beer. I don't have a very good Yoda, so I'm going to leave that one alone.
Hey, I mean, you tried,
Yeah, I gave it a
and I mean,
shot.
mine wouldn't be any better. So I have no room
Yeah.
to even laugh. All right, so we have one of those in, and let's see how secure that is. You know what? That's actually not going anywhere. You see that? I could push on that. That's not going anywhere. So for the purpose of the video, just
Yeah.
to try to speed things up a bit, I'm just going to put that one in. I'm going to go back in here anyway and revise some cables and stuff later. So I'm not going to go crazy with that right now. But once again, we're just going to put this guy on these little risers if it wants to go in.
Oh, and anyone who's building a PC without a standard screwdriver handy, kill yourself tonight. That is the most
Getting pretty
used.
harsh, sir.
Yeah, well, it's the most used tool. I mean, if you don't have a standard screwdriver just like in our hands reach, problem, because almost everything is that size in a PC that you're going to be screwing into. So just letting you know.
Yeah, that would absolutely be a less than stellar build.
Yeah.
Man, these screws, like the things that hold it in, they do not like this adapter. Man, the live fails are just abundant today.
Well, I mean, this person wants it certain parts. Yeah, I mean, sometimes you can't help it. You're like, well, that's what they want. You can't just say, well, I'm not gonna buy that for you for your build. You should, you can suggest things, but at the end of the day, they know what they want. So
yeah,
we can't stop that.
Yeah, I might have to look for a different way for this slider to be held on there.
Yeah.
Or I mean, if I had like a right tool for a job, I could probably make it fit. It's just really hard to do with bare fingers. It's just metal on metal, so it just hurts. So yeah, I mean that'll do for now. That's still not really going anywhere. So yeah, we'll revise that a bit later. But so that's basically how you go about installing the drives. Once again, we have 2 solid states and we have 2 hard drives as well. I'm just going to do one for right now, one of each, just because once again, just for the sake of the video, just to speed things up a bit. So the other 2 would be literally the exact same thing. So we're just going to leave it at that for now. And now we're down to the Blu-ray drive. So I will go ahead and try to scoot this case back a bit. And so let's see where this would go. So right here, as you guys can see, we do have like a little opening here. We could put the drive up here, and up here would be nice because these are actually toolless. But speaking with the guy I'm building this for, he would like the drive right here, which is just a matter of a couple screws, so it's really not a big deal. So let's see here. Where did I put that drive? It couldn't have gone very far. All right, I'm gonna play a game of I Spy. Whoever sees the first gets a cookie.
Getting warmer. No. Hey, we got a question, Bob. How high do you plan on overclocking that 4770K?
Right now, with that stock cooler, not at all. I mean, once we figure out the liquid cooling solution, I would say probably about 4 to 4.2 gigahertz. Once again, it could go a bit higher than that, just based on how good of a chip it is. It overclocks pretty well, but I think that's a sweet spot. After that, you really have to get very precise, very specific with your voltages and your base clock, and it takes a very long time. And so, if the client wants to do that, when he gets his computer, he wants to overclock it. He has absolute freedom to. But me personally, I'll probably get it to about 4.2, and call it a day, because that's still going to be a very fast chip. A couple years ago, 4 gigahertz was unheard of.
Right. Now it's standard on AMD. No. They have a little different architecture, though.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think they release one chip that was like stock 5 gigahertz or something.
Something like that. It was
It was something
stupid
ridiculous.
high. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, what? Required like 325 watts. No, it's
It's
crazy.
like, nah.
Yeah, I'm good.
I mean, for the Geek Bench and the power that you really get from that, it's just not even worth it.
Right.
Okay, so I think I might have to take out my RAM. Actually, this thing fell out by accident, but that probably actually makes life a lot easier. Just removing this whole piece.
Hmm.
But then again, I mean, I don't know. Just because this case isn't the best quality, I might just want to leave that alone. I don't want to risk snapping something. So I think rather than do that, I'm probably just going to take out the RAM. And that's one thing too, like the RAM, I always buy low profile. I love low profile memory because the heat sinks are much smaller. And in this build, they kind of blocked that drive from going in. So now we have to take it out. And so that is something that I could have seen earlier, but especially with something like an optical drive, I'm really not that worried about an optical drive at all. I don't even really
Nah.
think about it. So I'm like, what else do I have left?
Right.
Yeah, I don't know. We might have to actually take that off because now it looks like barely any of it, but some of that GPU is in the way.
See? Goes to my point earlier. It happens. I mean, it
Yeah.
sometimes it's weird. Sometimes it happens at the very last like part of the build, and you're like, "What?" You
Yep.
know?
It's like, come on, man.
Yeah.
Actually, what we'll do for the purpose of this video, once again, we'll just install it in the toolless install. That'll make life
Yeah.
a lot easier, and we'll get more clearance. Because, I mean, let's face it, I have a ton more work to do in here later anyway, so, why stress myself out now and take up your guys' time?
Makes sense.
So, all right, so it looks like there's a little arrow on here that says push. I really highly doubt you could read that, but there. So that is what you do. And now we're simply going to push the drive back. And then we have to find that perfect spot to where it's actually in line. Looks like we might, oh no, there it goes.
Nice.
Yeah, some drives, or really some cases, they require you to actually take like the faceplate off of the drive for it to work. That's what I thought happened, but it turns out it was just like a really, really exact fit. So yeah, that drive's in place. On here, I don't know if you saw it or not, there's like 2 little pins. Those act as the screws. So that's where, these first 2 bays here are toolless. These ones, however, are not. So you have to, fit it in just right and then actually use screws to secure it. Whereas this, you just click it into place and it's done.
Cool.
Yeah. Not all cases have that. I mean, there's some cases out there that go, the extra like 6,000 miles, and literally everything is toolless. And it's
Yeah,
so
I'm actually a
nice.
big fan of completely toolless cases. I mean,
Oh yeah.
they're really nice, especially being able to remove a hard drive by just pulling it, like just sliding it out instead of having to get a screwdriver and things like that. And yeah, it makes for upgrading things really, really fast. So, and then usually they send you extra brackets and things anyway, so it always works pretty nice. Yeah, I'm a big fan of toolless cases. I really like them if they're
Yep.
done right.
Ben DeWeese, or actually, yeah, he wanted to post the link, but he couldn't, to the user manual for that cooler. So thank you for that. Feel free to email it to me or something, and I'll definitely have a look at it. But more than likely, I'm probably just going to get in with a chat session or something with Intel, some kind of support, and just say, yo, listen, tell them how it is.
I want the CEO on this chat right now. We've got a problem.
Get in here. All
I
right,
don't
so
care
we're
if it's
down
in
to
a
the very
meeting.
last thing.
Nice. We're
All
almost
right, so
through,
we are
guys. We appreciate it.
down to the power supply. This once again, very weird wattage, 835 watts. I've never heard of that before in my life,
That's really
but it got very good reviews, and we did need a little bit of extra wattage because we are using dual cards in this build, so definitely needed the extra wattage. And for the reviews it got and the price that it was, it seemed like a pretty sweet spot to go. So
Yeah.
there's that. Myself personally, I've never used the Raid Max power supply, so we'll see how this goes. But
Which ones do you normally use? I mean, because normally I would use like back when the company was actually doing some stuff, BFG Tech. I used to use a 650 watt BFG Tech power supply, and then I started going over to like I actually my last one was like 850 watt OCZ branded one, and then I've had thermal
really?
takes. Like yeah, so what are some of the ones you guys like? I only like that one because it had like a really extended 12-volt rails. They were really long. Really liked it.
Really, I like Corsair power supplies. Those have never let me down. And more
Hmm.
often than not, I do go with Corsair power supplies. They're not insanely expensive. They're a little bit higher up on the scale than most are. But I mean, I've had mine running in there for 3.5 years. It's never given me a single problem.
Yeah.
I'm kind of just at its end now, though. I mean, like, as I said earlier, I am using every single available space, like for anything on there, whether it's SATA or PCI power. It's completely maxed out, so
Nice.
I'll probably have to upgrade that pretty soon. But in terms of the quality, I absolutely go with Corsair. Thermaltake also makes good ones as well, though. Also, Rosewell. I've owned one
Oh
Rosewell,
yeah, I
and
forgot about
I've,
Roswell.
I've had
Yeah.
no problems with that either. Rosewell is actually the one I use on my secondary machine. It's a very nice power supply. Now, Dante, I'll ask you this: do you prefer modular or non-modular? And for those of you that in the chat don't really know what that is, go ahead and just give a brief description of modular versus non-modular.
Basically a modular type model of a power supply. Basically, it has all the ending points are able to come off, which is huge because if you're using a lot of SATA connections and you don't need that many Molex, you can just take them right off. Versus the non-modular, you just have the huge coil coming out of the back on the inside of the power supply, and you either have to rope them off or zip tie them away or something or tuck them in a nice spot. I actually had one that was non-modular, and I had to, I ended up buying like my own separate coil to like bundle all the stuff I didn't use and just keep it away from everything because my
Yep.
video card was so huge. It obstructed a lot of my space on the inside. So definitely a big fan of modular power supplies because
Yep.
like I said, just being able to put and plug in everything you need and only what you need and being able to add later is perfect instead of, having you're using everything, but now you got too much stuff. You got, six Molex connectors around when you're pretty much just using all of the SATA connectors and things like that. So, very big fan. And modular ones will cost you a little bit more,
Yeah, I
and
do a
probably
little bit of
because
a
of
premium.
that. Yeah, but they're very, very nice. And then I also noticed usually from having a modular to non-modular ones, I feel like the airflow is better in modular ones. I don't know why, but I feel like the performance-wise, as far as the heat and cooling system, is usually better on a modular than a non-modular one. So that's just my opinion. They're very nice. You guys could check it out. If you guys don't know, just Google them and see what's on there and see how they actually hook together and go from there. So and it's really nice to think about if you got, a video card that takes six or two 6 pins or something, a lot of time your non-modular one will only have one. So you have to come up with like some sort of an adapter or something like that to accommodate the power for your video card. Well, as with a modular one, you can actually just add another one, on a spot that you don't already, have. You could just plug another one in and usually they come with more anyway. So it's good to go. So I really, really like it.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, getting back to the airflow thing, I could see how it would affect it because, I mean, based on where your power supply is, and actually I was going to show you, I mean, most cases, there are some that's top mounted, but the industry, I guess, has kind of gravitated towards them being on the bottom. And I guess, a reason for that is if your power supply has an intake, the air on the floor is cooler, so it'll run cooler down here than it will up here. Also because heat rises from your components up to the top too. So
Right.
up at the top, the power supply is going to take in warmer heat than it will down here. But aside from that, where this is, if you have a non-modular with all the extra cables you have right here, where are you gonna tuck them? You're probably gonna put extra cables right underneath here or back in here. And so most fans, or rather most cases nowadays, have an air intake on the front. And if all
Yeah.
your cables are blocking it, you're not going to get the air intake that you would normally. So that's my hypothesis behind that.
Yeah.
But so the power supply we are using today is modular. and which makes it an even bigger bang for the buck. We got a really good deal on it. For an 800-watt power supply, I forget the exact amount we paid, but I mean it was no more than 60 or $70 or so. I think
Yeah,
it was
that's a
around
good deal.
70,
Because
and
here on
especially for
Amazon
having
right now, it's $99. So
yeah.
yeah, yeah. So you're dropping $100 if you're getting on Amazon, and you ended up getting a better deal. So that worked out great, and especially for like what you said, for being a modular design and for the price. I mean, you can't beat that.
Yeah.
That's very good. For the wattage.
Yeah, how are the reviews on Amazon?
Let's check here. 17 people hate it. Another guy says buy another one. Another guy says go to hell. No, I'm joking. They're actually getting really good reviews. They're saying a lot of people were impressed of the weight of what it was, and of course, the price, because apparently it was on sale when this guy bought it. But yeah, they say it works perfect. They like the blue LED that's on it. That's actually nice. Another guy here says runs cool and smooth. Yeah. So yeah, it's a pretty good power supply by Raid Max. And
There you
honestly,
go.
without actually using one, I wouldn't have recommended it. But I mean, it's got really good reviews, so pretty good.
Yeah, there you go. You guys are welcome. And by the way, I will say, if you're interested in any of the hardware that we are using here today, you're like, where can I find that? There's links to every single piece of hardware in this build right down in the description. That'll take you right to Amazon, where you can see all the specs and how much it
Yeah.
costs and related products and things like that. So feel free to browse those. It's actually a pretty common request before the stream started, was to list everything out. Let's see, the Prince Ali, I think. What is this build going to be used for? This is going to be a Windows and an OS 10 machine. On the Windows side of things, this SLI is going to come in really handy for gaming, especially if you want to run, like multiple monitors, things like that. But also on the OS 10 side of things, pretty much just about anything else. This will be a great computer for anything from light everyday tasks to really intense video editing and everything in between. So I would say anything. This is actually a very I don't even know the right word to use, but it can be used for anything. It's very versatile, I guess we could say. It's not geared towards one very specific person or one very specific user. But so what we're going to do now is, like as I mentioned earlier, this is a modular power supply. And so in the box here, we have the extra cables that are included.
Nice.
And so we have 4 drives and an optical drive, so that you figure that's going to be 5 SATA connections.
Mm-hmm.
So on each one of these, there's 4. So unfortunately, we're going to have to use 1 and have 3 extra, but we'll do that. And then also we are going to need 2 PCI connections, or 2 of those connections. So we need one of those that has, and I believe, I can't even find it here. I know I did use this earlier. I had this on my test bench. So yeah, those cables are over there. But they do have dual 8-pin on per wire. There's 2 8-pins, which can also turn into a 6. So each one of these will be able to power 1 card. So we'll have 2 of those. And actually, I'm going to go run over and get that really quick. But Dontae, while I'm gone, how much power, or I guess a better way to phrase it would be, why do you think that they choose, like 2 different sockets, like how this card has an 8 and a 6? Why do you think they do that? Is it like a very specific power requirement, or do they just try to make your life more difficult?
Well, I think it's my personal opinion. I think it's because of different loads on usage. I mean, they definitely want to accommodate the cards in a higher setting, of course. Like, say, if you're doing a lot of intense gaming, it's of course going to draw more power. But in a low setting, it's not going to do as much if it's just sitting idle. Say if you're at work or away from the PC. So being able to accommodate those different architectures on the pins is just to help out the power throughout the performance. So even at a low setting, you should be just fine, but even the highest setting, you should be fine too, by having the compatible power supply. So with the different ranges and voltages that are always going through your computer, everything is, nothing stays steady. There's always going up and down, and and even your power even spikes a little different if you VCN into your network and have your Ethernet turn your computer on, or something like that to wake it up. up, yet there's different voltages all the time. So it's just basically to help better regulate the voltage in between the different tasks that you're performing with that video card, if you're using it at high settings, mid settings, or just letting it run idle. So I think that's the reason why they do that. And, you know, it does help out. Sometimes it does make it a little difficult if you have like a non-modular power supply, and some older power supplies too that don't accommodate those pins, and maybe only have, you know, one set or something. So to be able to power those two GPUs, you may have a problem.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, if you get into like the cards that are really powerful, I've seen like a few select cards have like a dual 8-pin instead of one 8 and one 6. But also,
Yeah.
I have an ASUS version of the same card over there, and it only has one 8. There is no 6 at all. So I mean, it depends on the manufacturer. Maybe their cooling system requires a little bit more power, or and especially because this is where the super clock comes in handy, because this card is overclocked out of the box. So naturally, already it requires more power than the other card would. That's running at stock speeds. So power, I mean, the out of the box power that it needs is also a factor too. So what we're going to do here, we have our SATA power. We have 2 of those because we need 5, and there's 4 per line, I guess you could say. If you noticed, these fans are Molex. These are the older Molex connection. So we do have a Molex connector here. So we need that. We have our CPU power right there. There's the dual 4. And then here's a 24-pin standard ATX, as well as our 2 PCI wires here. So here's that 8-pin that turns into a 6 that I was talking about, and you know, the 6-pin right there. So that's good for one card, and then here's going to be card number 2. So literally, and this is very rare, every cable that could be detached from the system, we will actually be using. So I guess, and for the purpose of this video, I'm really not concerned at all with cable management. I'm literally just gonna like plug these in, because once again, there's a lot of work I still have to do inside of this case outside of this video. So I'm gonna be back in here anyway, taking parts out, and that's when I'll make it look really nice. You know, route the cables behind the motherboard tray, and you know, things like that. So for now, I'm just gonna connect it, like make it look like a little homemade bomb here or something. So here's our 24-pin ATX connector. That just goes right here, pretty standard. It's always on the right side of the motherboard, and so simply just push straight down.
Nice.
So there's that. Make sure that's snug into place. Now we're going to do our dual 4-pin for the processor. So let's go ahead. That's always found right by the processor. I mean, the positioning could be slightly different, but it'll pretty much, for the most part, be right around that same area always. It's kind of something that the motherboard makers just have kind of agreed on, I guess. And it makes sense. I mean, the CPU power is going to be by the CPU. So now what we're going to do is we're going to start to attach the removable ones. So right here, this is the PCI power. So this is going to be what we use for the graphics cards. This end goes in the power supply. This end goes in the card. And so what we're going to do, it's actually labeled on here. It's kind of hard to see, but you know, there's PCI, peripheral SATA, things like that. So take this, put it into the PCIe, plug that in. And then, of course, ignoring all cable management, I'm going to take this 8-pin, really the 6, and make it an 8. And we're going to push straight down into the card, like so. Like that. And now we have the 6, which is a very similar story, like that. So now that card will be powered. And now we're literally just going to do the exact same thing again for the second card. Will I be installing the operating system in this video? I will not be going through the whole process. You know, I'll insert the drive and you know, boot. I'm not going to do that because I've done that on the past streams, and as well as having videos dedicated to just how to boot, how to make a Unibeast drive, and all that stuff. So feel free to check out those videos. You know, just for time constraints and time purposes, I probably won't be doing much of that in this particular video. But so here we go again with the 6/8-pin power. And some of these are a little bit hard to line up because those extra 2 pins that make the 8, they're not attached, so you have to get it just right, or else it won't sit in there right. Man, this is going to be like a casserole in here. This is like some hardcore spaghetti right now. Okay. And now we're going to plug in. And right now I'm only going to install one of these because at the moment we only have the 2 drives plugged in. So we're going to take our SATA. And here we go, plugging that in to the power supply. Like that. And then I'll route this, back behind here. And then I'll actually stand the case up in a minute here, and plug the cables into the drives. And optical drive, I'm not going to worry about powering that because we have no use for it at the moment, because UniBeast is based off of a flash drive and not a disk. Now, one thing that we will need though is the Molex, otherwise you won't have any fans, which is just begging for trouble. So one more. This goes in the same type of port that the SATA ones did. We have our spaghetti getting tangled here. And then after this, we're pretty much done with the build. Everything will not be looking pretty, but it'll at least power on and be functional. Yeah, this the spaghetti here is definitely making it kind of a challenge to see. And actually, you know what? I think I'm just going to remove one of these first. That'll make my life a bit easier. But in terms of wattage, I would say this build probably, if it's just on, not really doing much, just sitting idle, I would say it's probably going to consume about 650 watts. Once you start revving up those GPUs and the processor, probably closer to 750. And so on top of that, we still have about an additional 100 watts for future upgrades, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so one other thing here. I'm not going to install the front USB connectors just because of the crazy spaghetti we have going on here. And really, we don't need them. So I'll do that later. And if you want to know how to do that, refer to one of my previous live builds. That'll take you really close in depth there, and you can see exactly how that's done. And I think that's really just about it, aside from actually plugging in some of these fans. And at least the most crucial fans are plugged in. This Intel one that we installed, that was part of the cooler. That's actually being run off the motherboard's 4-pin fan header, so that doesn't need power. That's already good to go. The CPU fan, which is the most crucial, is also powered by the motherboard itself. So we could just plug in, say, for example, like the top fan here, and that'll be okay for now. This system won't be running for very long before I shut it off. So once again, in a very hideous fashion, I'm just going to run this cable right up through here and plug it in. See, this is why I don't like Molex. Those pins can move around in there, and it just makes it a very fun time to install. So even that I don't think is in it. Molex, you kind of have to get those little 4 pins in there just right, which is why it was ditched. The new SATA connectors are so much easier. Yeah, I don't even think I'm going to bother myself with that right now. But in theory, the system should boot. Really, we don't even need to wire the power switch because all it takes is a metal object such as a screwdriver, and you can just touch the 2 pins together, and it completes the circuit and turns your machine on. So for now, I'm just going to do that. And I guess the best way to do this is to, I guess we'll stand it up. And really quick, I'll move the camera here just to show you guys the completed build. I guess I really shouldn't say completed build, but for all intents and purposes, the completed build. So we can try to, I'm going to have to take this whole table with me because I actually have the camera hooked up to my MacBook, which is giving you guys the close-up video here. So I apologize if the lighting is less than stellar. I can try to lower the tripod a bit. Maybe something like that. So how's that? Can you guys see that? I might actually move it down a bit more. So I know that the cables are terrible. Trust me, I would never leave a system close to this. But at least this view will, you guys can see, you know, the processor, the RAM, the dual GPUs. That's definitely, I think, the highlight of this build is the two graphics cards. Sorry for the camera kind of going out of frame there. But there we guys, there you have it. And so I guess what we'll do really quick before we sign off here is we'll fire it up.
Now it should turn on.
Keyword once again.
I read that. We're like click, 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 click.
5 days later.
Yeah.
I have to untangle this cord. There we go. Sorry if I'm making you guys seasick. Also really quick before I get the cable all plugged in for it to power on, this is my Unibeast drive right here. If you want to know how to make one of these, I have a video on my channel. It's very, very easy. And this is actually what you use to install OS 10 if you've never done it before. Yeah, Skeleton Rider 1994. Holy spaghetti. I agree. And it's like a chip. Like
there's ever.
There's not even any sauce on that spaghetti. It's terrible. Just noodles. All right. Now I need to find where I set that power cable. I have a habit of playing I Spy. Okay, I see it. Absolutely worst cable management ever.
Nice.
Yeah, we'll just we'll hold those Molex together. We won't just to make sure that it makes contact. I can hire someone full time that whenever my computer's on, he'll just like hold the connection there. That's the way to go. Oh boy. Nope, not gonna reach. But we can make it work. Just like a mouse, as MKBHD would say.
Yeah.
All right, so now we need video. Now, the best way to get video, actually I have a cable right over here.
Now, also, guys, if Bob ends up blowing himself up, all the views and opinions are held by Bob CPU Kit Roche at RocheTechnology.com. Does not reflect Dontae, Kansas City Nightmare Harris, and or the producer Terrell Clark for safety.
So here we have a mini, just a regular DisplayPort cable, which it's nice in OS 10 with these cards. The DisplayPort works right out of the box. It's just fine. So it's literally plug and play. That'll work.
Nice.
Okay, so we have the Unibeast drive in. Another thing we're going to need is a keyboard and a mouse. Actually, I have to go over to my desk to get that.
MacBook Skype has frozen.
Probably happened when I disconnected the monitor.
Crappage. We're getting it figured out.
How about that?
Well, what about now, Terrell? Terrell's in the media booth right now. He's in the truck. So we're getting that live feed from NASA, is that right? Huh? Really? I was not aware of that.
All right, we're good?
How are we looking, Terrell?
definitely
got
would
no
grab that
comment.
keyboard and mouse.
Yo, Terrell, how are we looking now? Good. All right, we're looking good.
Okay, so we have keyboard and mouse. And then I think that should be about it. I say we could probably start counting down from 20 seconds, and we'll see. Okay, so we are good to go. And I know you guys probably can't see it, but a nice feature of this motherboard, it actually has a power and a reset button right on the board. So I'm really glad I didn't waste my time wiring that because there's a button right there.
Nice.
So I'm just going to hit that and we should be on our way. Actually, you know what? The video should be coming out of the first GPU. I don't know why I didn't think of that earlier. This is interesting. Aha. Okay, I saw that the processor fan wasn't spinning, but it's just because there's a cable in the way. Yeah, it's still in the way. That's another thing I don't like about the Intel cooler, is that these wires, they move real easily, and they can stop your fan from spinning. I've actually had people say that, you know, their computer will run fine for months, and then all of a sudden one day they hear like a and it's just because the cable moved.
Yeah.
It moved just enough that the fan hit it. That's kind of that noise we have going on here. And it's really hard to loosen it up too. There we go. So now that loosened it way too much, but I can go back in there like I already have to do for a lot of things in this particular build and fix it. Alright. Alright, so I say we try this again. Alright, we're going to hit that power button. And there we go. Can you guys see the monitor?
Yep.
Okay, is it like in plain sight? Could it be moved a bit, or is it good? Okay. Yeah, let me try to pull up my my viewer. Okay, yeah, I see. Maybe something like that. So yeah, this is Asus's BIOS, and I have to say it definitely beats Gigabytes. It's much more elegant, I guess you could say. The layout's really nice. It gives you a ton of statistics right at a glance. Even Gigabyte's version of their Haswell BIOS, it is very good. It does also show you a lot of information, but it looks kind of claustrophobic. There's a lot of stuff crammed in there, so I think this is a really nice BIOS. Okay, so, oh, actually, yeah, I never plugged in the hard drives. I should probably do that.
Nice.
But it did boot, so we have that going for us. I don't think I'm going to turn the whole computer around. We can't really get a good angle. But basically what we're going to do here is we're going to simply take these, plug them into the back of the hard drive, and we're going to do the same exact thing with these cables. So a
Cool.
very easy process. Nothing that's very complicated, very complex. And actually, I don't have the chat up in front of me at the moment. Are there any questions coming in or anything? Questions,
Mostly
comments,
just general stuff.
concerns?
They're all talking to each other. It's a good deal. That's what we're doing. Real laid back.
Yeah, that's what I like.
They're talking about your spaghetti wiring, how sexy the BIOS is.
It is a nice BIOS. I really
That's a
like it.
pretty nice BIOS. You know, I like a real nice shaped BIOS. You know, so only the finest for my basic input output system.
Yes.
Not as complicated as a complementary metal oxide semiconductor.
Not quite.
Not quite.
Okay, so we have one of the SATA connections in, and now it is also in the back of the solid state. And I think that's all I'm going to worry about for now. We're not going to be doing anything with the 2 terabyte drive anyway.
Nice.
So, try number 3. Alright, so we're hitting the delete key to get into the BIOS. It's pretty universal. It's the same exact key on gigabyte boards.
Yep.
Okay, so now we're going to go down to our SATA information. And now it is actually showing up as that 240 gig solid state, which is a very good thing. Now we're going to go into the advanced mode here of the BIOS. And we're going to look for anything that OS X wouldn't like. Things like SATA configuration. It's all AHCI, just like it should be, which is good.
Yep.
SATA support all devices. And that's what's nice nowadays. I mean, it's pretty much compatible out of the box. There's really not much you have to change, if anything, anymore.
Yeah, I remember how many settings you had to change at first in your BIOS. It was like,
Oh,
whoa.
yeah.
At first, it was like you're nervous to do it. You're like, wait a minute. Then if you don't really understand what's going on in the BIOS of like what some of those acronyms and things mean in there, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just like, Arnold Schwarzenegger working on an iPhone or something. He's like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what to do. Oh my God, I don't know what to do. I'm going to put it in there. It doesn't work. It's not booting. I don't understand. So it can be very confusing, by the way, but now it's a lot easier. I mean, we were doing the Hackintosh when it was like really hard and you had to really know what was going on. It was like almost impossible to update, and you didn't get sound drivers and stuff, and had to wait on somebody's to make a KEX file or something like that. So it's gone. It's gone a long way. It really has. So I'm actually excited about it, and I probably will build another one. I'm sure I will. I liked it. It was very stable.
It's fun.
Yeah.
All right, so here we are at the boot menu, and we have 2 choices. We have the flash drive or the solid state drive. Probably going to want to go with the flash drive for this one. And now here is the Chimera bootloader. And so from here, depending on your system, you may need different flags, graphics enabler, NPCI, PCI root UID. I mean, we can go on all day for the number of kernel flags. But just because I don't think this board needs any, I could be misled by that. We'll find out. And I believe in the newest version of Chimera, since most people nowadays are using NVIDIA cards, they require graphics enabler set to no. Tony Mac made it default to that, nice. So you don't really need to do that here. So we should be able to just hit enter, and it should boot.
Nice.
So I see an apple.
Which is good.
It is good. That's definitely a good sign, yeah.
When you see a kernel panic, that is bad.
You'll know a kernel panic if you see it.
Yeah, not good.
The kernel panics, and then it makes you panic.
Yeah, it's like, oh no kernel panic, I do not like it. Come onto my screen. or however your computer talks to you when it kernel panics. I don't know if you guys have that driver exactly installed, but that's how mine acts when a kernel panics. You're like, no, you do not do it. I will not boot for you. Never, I not do it. Then I'm like, you must do it. I have to play the Minecraft. I must do it now. So, and you guys know how it is when you need to play Minecraft and you can't. It's horrible. It'll end your day. You kill yourself tonight on the spot live. I wonder if we were
Oh
going to do
boy,
the first live death on a Hackintosh build. You know, Colonel
that'd be
Panic.
so terrible.
Yeah. Man, I wonder how many views we get. No, never mind. We're all about that number here.
Yes, it's worth the death.
And we do appreciate you guys tuning in for this long. It's been a long day.
Oh yeah.
I went to work today. I was driving really far, so I wasn't exactly feeling well when we first started. But we do appreciate you guys tuning in to bring this live build to you. And this will not be uploaded this huge. We're going to edit it and cut it down and crunch it down to the meat and potatoes of it. But it's nice that you guys get this live experience, and we can talk and chat and get some information through the comments here on YouTube and through the IRC. So we do appreciate you guys tuning in, taking your time out of your day to look at us basically, and hear horrible impressions and, whatever else going on, Hackintosh juice and things like that. So it's good stuff and we appreciate it.
Yes, he basically summed it up. Thank you guys very much for watching. We've been at a consistent, fluctuating anywhere from 80 to like 140 people throughout the whole show. So thank you guys for sticking around. It really helps. Lets us know you like this kind of a thing. And definitely leave any suggestions for future builds. There will definitely be more in the future. And so, if there's anything else you'd like to see that will make you come back, then please leave us a comment, and we'd be happy to do that for you, depending on what it is. I mean, don't be like, I'd love to have Miley Cyrus there, because that's not happening.
Oh, God, no.
That build would have been better if Miley would have done it.
I bet that bracket would have worked.
She would have made that cooler work.
Didn't she just go to jail? I think I saw something with Miley Cyrus just went to jail. Some people say it was Justin Bieber. I don't believe it. It was Miley Cyrus.
Was it the Biebs?
Miley Cyrus,
I think it was the Biebs.
No makeup. Dang it. So.
That's hilarious.
Yeah, it was.
All right, but
anyway.
Basically what I'm doing is just setting up the drive. As you guys can see, we did get into the installer, Miley Cyrus free. So you just continue on, format the drive. Yes, we came in like a wrecking ball and we formatted this drive. All it ever did was wreck me.
Jeez.
That's definitely the Intel cooler. All it ever did was wreck me. I think it was terrible. But yeah, there you go. Like I said, I'm not going to go too in depth with it in this video because I already have videos on my channel, more than one, dedicated to just doing this. So feel free to look this up on my channel if you need any help. But as you guys can see, we did not need a single kernel flag. Graphics enable was already set to no, so there was no crazy PCI commands. This is with a dual GPU, that's SLI. Works just fine. It works really nicely actually. And so I formatted the drive, and we're simply just going to hit install. And these are pretty nice solid-state drives. This should take no longer than I'd say 10 minutes or so. And then after that, you just reinstall the bootloader to the hard drive, or in this case, a solid-state drive, and you have a working copy of OS 10, really, on a brand new Haswell-based PC. I just saw your comment. No, not the Biebs.
Yeah. That hurt me personally that Justin Bieber went to jail, only because as all rich, spoiled kids from Canada who's living in the United States on a work visa, they just want to have fun. And being able to do drugs and hang out with prostitutes, why can't we do that? We're having fun. I mean, that's like telling you can't build a Hackintosh. I think it's a travesty, and it's definitely hurts me to the core. And I'm going to represent him in his next case. It's going to be Dontae, Tennessee Nightmare Attorney at Law, representing Justin Bieber. So tune in. We're going to have them live on Tech Habit Weekly. We're going to show you live inside the court case and inside his jail cell to see exactly how large his cot is and the Wi-Fi speed inside that particular prison. Tune in next week. So that's a joke, by the way. We're not going to cover
I
that.
was getting excited.
We will check on that Wi-Fi speed in that particular prison, though. They're uploading to Twitter while they're in there. They're like going in for a shower.
Meanwhile, I'm in the back just building another computer.
Right. It's going to be nice.
All right, but there you guys go. I think we've just about reached the end of the stream here. Once again, thank you guys very much for tuning in. As you can see, the build is up and running just fine. Be sure to follow me, Dontae, and Terrell all on Twitter. Some guy that doesn't get a whole lot of mention and appreciation, Terrell behind the scenes, controlling all the shots, making sure everything works well and is brought to you guys. Because without Terrell, I mean, like we said at the beginning of the show, I'm about 1,200 miles, like a 14-hour drive away from these guys, and without Terrell controlling the cameras, you guys would never see what's going on here. So huge thanks to him. Really helps having a dedicated producer. Huge thanks to you, Dontae. Thanks for sitting with me the whole time and doing some crazy impressions, making people stick around and easing the pain of that Intel cooler. Be sure to let people know where they can find you online.
Best place to find me is at twitter.com, and I am at KC Nightmare. It's not spelled any funky way. KCNIGHTMARE. Then you can also tune in with me and Bob for Tech Habit Weekly. We try to bring that show every Wednesday, Thursday-ish. And you guys can check it out live, and then we'll actually have the final upload later. And we cover all the tech news topics and things that you guys care about, and as well, the Hackintosh news, Android news, different things that just about technology. Nice podcast. You can actually check us in the podcast section in the iOS App Store too. So check us out. CPU Kid, KC Nightmare. Thanks you guys for tuning in. We really like having this. Being able to be live for you guys and comment with you guys and be here. And we appreciate the dedication, because I know a lot of you guys are up late and sat here and watch this brutal build forever. And it's a long time to sit in front of, the computer screen to watch a group of guys do something. So we really appreciate it. And another shout out to Terrell, who's the producer again, for making all this possible, making it happen, to switch the cameras for you guys to keep it as best in the display as possible. So we really appreciate it. That's why we do this, and we just thank you. I can't say it enough. Thank you guys.
Absolutely, couldn't have said it better myself. I'm at CPU Kid on Twitter. Be sure to follow me with any updates about this particular build. Once again, I do want to just plug myself here. This build did come to me via my Customize a Computer forum. So I mean, if you're interested at all in having me build a computer for you, whether it's a gaming machine or a Hackintosh, even just like a little Linux build, even anything from a tiny little mini ITX build to any dual Xeon server, I'd be more than happy to build it for you. There's a link right in the description of this video. It's RocheTechnology.com/customize. The price you see on the forum is everything. It's including shipping, the actual price I charge, and of course all the hardware. Feel free to check that out if you're at all interested. And thank you guys very much once again for watching. And please don't go anywhere. Tell your friends to subscribe. And we really appreciate it. And we'll see you back here on the channel before you know it. Thanks, guys. Later.